Chapter 783. Rays of soul light flew over from the sky one after another. They were all powerhouses, from Jean Lin to Shi Hong, and then to Winged Godhead and Ing Wudi. Which one of them wasn't an evolver that intimidated their peers? For a moment, brightly colored soul force surged and shook this space. As spiritual bodies pounced over one after another, the ground was torn apart by the vibrating soul force. The boulders in this area exploded and the ground split into pieces. At this level, even if it was just the circulation of pure spiritual power that didn't involve the corporeal body, blood, qi, and so on, it could turn all matter in the heavens into fine powder once it erupted. The positions that Jean Lin, Yuan Shiqing, Ing Zhixian, and the others chose were very particular. They joined forces and pounced on Chu Feng. If he was really struck by their soul light, he would most likely explode on the spot and turn into divinity granules. "Everyone, stop!" shouted Chu Feng. He mobilized the soul bell at the first instant. The big black bell enveloped him beneath it and protected his body from being touched by those brightly colored soul light. They had already shed all pretense of cordiality, yet he actually called for them to stop at the last moment. This exceeded everyone's expectations. At this moment, some people were hesitant. They were very puzzled and slowed down their movements. However, some people were rather resolute and pressed forward courageously, such as Jean Lin, Winged Godhead, and Immortal Destiny Physique. They didn't waver at all and charged over just like that. Jean Lin usually had a meager appearance and didn't fight for anything. He gave off a feeling that he was aloof and unworldly, but he was tyrannical and terrifying in a truly crucial situation. He was unmoved. Besides that, there was another person who exceeded everyone's expectations, and that was Ing Zhixian. She had always been graceful and elegant with an immortal aura. She was as transcendent as an otherworldly fairy, but now she formed a fist seal and erupted with a glaring rain of light. She was like a flying immortal with peerless offensive power as she attacked Chu Feng with incomparable resolution. Her spiritual energy was especially dense and terrifying. It carried yang qi and her strength was even stronger than her younger brother, Ing Wudi. This definitely exceeded everyone's previous judgment. Wasn't Ing Wudi the strongest descendant of the quasi-saint race? Chu Feng dodged. With so many people attacking him at the same time, he naturally wouldn't face them head-on. This was especially so when the top few used their trump cards and joined forces to attack. He had to avoid the brunt of their attacks. Stop. This concerns the life and death of all of us. The evolutionary army of this world might have arrived. Chu Feng shouted again. He was incomparably serious as he faced everyone. Whoosh! A streak of colorful light flew past. It was a fatal attack unleashed by the Dao clan's Jean Lin. It caused even Chu Feng's expression to change slightly. This Dao child was indeed shockingly powerful. Boom! The Winged Godhead smacked the place where Chu Feng had just been standing. His palm struck empty air and triggered a spiritual storm. The sonic boom there was peerlessly terrifying like a tsunami. Chi, streaks of soul light fell through the air one after another. Most of them didn't hit Chu Feng, and only a small portion of them flew over and struck the soul bell, causing a rumbling sound to ring out. This was Chu Feng's intention. He had to avoid the attacks of the top few. When this group of people joined hands, their destructive power was too great. If he really tried to face them head-on, he would only be courting death. If he couldn't avoid the attacks of the others, he could choose to block them with the soul bell. This time, Chu Feng's warning and shout were effective. When he mentioned the evolutionary army of this world, it made everyone fearful. Even Taoist Jean Lin, the Immortal Destiny Physique, and Ing Wudi suspended their attacks and suddenly stopped. Only Shi Hong didn't stop. His battlefield wasn't here. His golden soul light charged toward Ouyang Feng to rescue the guardian Vajra Shi Wu, who was emitting green smoke. Not far away, Shi Wu cut a rather sorry figure. He was in an extremely miserable state as his entire body twitched and green smoke surged. That was his soul power melting away. If it wasn't for the glaring golden light emitting from his body at the crucial moment to form the golden soul bell canopy, he would have been finished off. The golden soul bell canopy evolved from the Buddhist race's breathing technique shown from the inside out and penetrated his body to help him block Ouyang Feng's fatal soul blade. Yellow hair, you're really lucky. Ouyang Feng was in trouble. He actually didn't kill his opponent. He brandished the golden long blade with all his might and vibrated the purple soul drum floating above his head at the same time. Clang, clang, clang. The Buddhist race's golden soul bell canopy was extraordinary. It was constructed from spiritual energy, and there was a Bodhi imprint on the wall of the golden bell, as well as an image of an old Buddha that helped Shi Wu block the calamity of death. At this moment, Shi Wu was still twitching. The main reason was that he was struck too heavily by Chu Feng's deity striking whip. His entire body was convulsing, and if it wasn't for the bell that appeared on the surface of his body to protect him, he would have been in grave danger. Ouyang Feng found an opportunity. The golden soul bell canopy protected Shi Wu's entire body, but the mouth of the bell at his feet was wide open. It was no different from a large bell in reality. Kill! Blade light erupted and soul power surged. Toad went to chop at Shi Wu's feet, and bloody light immediately surged. Even though it was formed from spiritual energy, its performance was more or less the same as a corporeal body. When golden Buddhist blood splashed out, it meant that Shi Wu's spiritual energy was disintegrating and being cut open. Shi Wu howled in pain. What made him embarrassed was that he hadn't recovered his mobility for a while, and the hegemon god was extremely wretched. He extended the soul blade from below the golden soul bell canopy to cut off his legs and stab his buttocks. Yellow hair, I heard you're constipated. Let me help you clear it. Ouyang Feng laughed heartily. His attack was extremely sinister. With a bang, he wished he could break the soul blade and launch an attack with all his might. Shi Wu was so angry that he was about to explode. He roused his spiritual energy with all his might, and he could finally move. He resisted and evaded with all his might. At the same time, Shi Hong arrived with a solemn appearance. The Buddhist race's spiritual energy beam surged and swept over. Ha! Ouyang Feng laughed heartily and said, Shi Wu, didn't you want to take me in as the Buddhist race's mountain-protecting divine beast? This grandfather will use practical actions to teach you a lesson and teach you how to be a person. How does it feel? All of this happened in the time it takes for a spark to fly off a flint. On the other side of the battlefield, several tens of people joined hands and blasted out with interweaving soul light. It could be said to be an all-out attack, but it was actually dodged by Chu Feng and didn't kill him on the spot. This shocked everyone. At this moment, these people temporarily stop. What do you have to say? Yan Luo sneered and revealed an expression that said, Chu Feng is dead for sure. He was no longer anxious. With so many apex experts joining hands, they would undoubtedly kill Chu Feng. Jin Lin, Ing Zhixian, and the winged godhead didn't utter a word. Their expressions were cold and detached, and they could attack and kill him again at any time. Chu Feng's expression became increasingly solemn as he said, A great crisis is coming. Luo Shurong colluded with the evolvers of this world a while ago and brought an army over. They're about to arrive, and I know the direction they're marching in. I can bring you guys to avoid them safely. What a joke. It's clearly you who colluded with the evolvers of this world, yet you're still splashing dirty water on the dead? Superfluous combat physique interrupted his words. He was afraid that an accident would occur, so he wanted to take down Chu Feng as soon as possible. It would be best if he was heavily injured first before extorting a confession. But at this moment, Jin Lin, Ing Zhixian, Yuan Shiqing, and the others had grave expressions on their faces. They had always been worried about this aspect, and had long since made a decision to leave this place as soon as possible. Now that Chu Feng mentioned it, it naturally touched their heartstrings. No matter what, everyone, let's cripple him first. After that, we can interrogate him however we want and make him confess everything he knows, especially that mutant technique. Yen Luo from the corpse race strongly suggested that they capture and kill Chu Feng first. He was very worried that variables would arise. You're feeling guilty, aren't you? You're afraid of implicating the secret of you colluding with Luo Shirong. Chu Feng pressed forward and glared at him furiously. You're talking nonsense. Yen Luo berated. After that, he looked at the people in the surroundings and said, Everyone, he's stalling for time. Quickly attack and cripple him. Chu Feng's expression suddenly changed. He raised his head and looked toward the horizon in a certain direction as he shouted, Not good. They're coming. Look, the smoke of war is surging over there, and the blood qi is overflowing. This is definitely the blood qi of over 10,000 evolvers combined together. The evolvers' army is charging over. Everyone paled as they were all horrified. This was definitely a great disaster, and everyone would face the calamity of being killed. For a moment, everyone looked toward the end of the horizon. Bang! In a split second, Chu Feng moved. Like a bolt of lightning, he attacked Yen Luo, who was currently gazing at the end of the horizon, and attacked him from behind with all his strength. This situation wasn't right? Everyone was stunned. Many people were attracted by his words as they looked toward the end of the horizon, but he actually attacked at this juncture and attacked Yen Luo from the corpse race? Yen Luo also turned sideways as he gazed at the end of the horizon. He absolutely didn't expect that this supremely righteous Luanhui king would actually be so shameless and attack like this. Everyone was speechless. Who said that Wu Luanhui was supremely righteous and upright? To hell with it. The rumors in the starry sky were simply misleading. They really happened over and over again. He always had a serious expression and was pretending to be a big-tailed wolf over there. There was no lower limit to how despicable he could be. However, not everyone was paying attention to the great disaster on the horizon. Taoist Jin Lin and Ing Zhixian were the same from start to finish and were silent. Now, they moved with a loud bang to stop Chu Feng. There were also some people who were very vigilant. They reacted in the first instance and attacked Chu Feng. However, Chu Feng was too swift at this moment. He used all of his methods, and his spiritual energy boiled as his soul light swept over. His spiritual attack injured Yen Luo in the first instance. The strongest descendant of the corpse race let out a muffled groan as 5-colored divine light erupted around his body. The corpse race was special. They were born from death and nurtured a wisp of true yang in a place with extremely heavy yin qi. Their spiritual energy was special as it was wrapped with dense vitality and yang qi, and their soul light was firm. If it was someone else, they would definitely be killed by Chu Feng's spiritual attack, and their soul would scatter and scatter. However, Yen Luo was already heavily injured and staggered backward. Clank! At the same time, the black soul bell above Chu Feng's head erupted. Bell waves engulfed everything as they rumbled forward. Boom! At the juncture of life and death, Yen Luo opened his mouth and spat out a small silver flag. This was an astonishing soul weapon that helped him block a fatal blow. Even so, he still flew out horizontally. His spiritual energy transformed into blood that splattered everywhere as a large area of his body cracked. That small silver flag became dim and lightless. At the same time, Taoist Jin Lin and Ing Zhixian's trump card arrived. However, Chu Feng lightly shook and his soul bell shone to protect him. He forcefully blocked the secret technique of the two powerhouses. Bang! The large bell violently shook and made Chu Feng's body unstable as he flew forward. The large bell enveloped him as it buzzed. Those two people were very strong, but the soul bell blocked their joint attack. In fact, Chu Feng's body flew out horizontally because he was intentionally borrowing the force. He swooped down towards Yen Luo and struck out with the deity's striking whip in his hand. Lightning erupted and countless electric sparks flew as it specifically attacked Yin's spirit. Ah! Yen Luo screamed miserably as he couldn't avoid the lightning. There were some parts of his body that splattered blood in all directions as his spiritual energy was severely depleted. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. Everyone's attacks were swift and fierce. Wu Luanhui, you sinister person! What Luanhui monarch is righteous and righteous? You're too shameless! Someone cursed loudly. Yen Luo flew very far away before he was received by the superfluous combat physique, the purple cloud golden body, and the others. They protected him from behind. At this moment, he was burning with fury and a spiritual storm swept up in his surroundings. He was extremely angry. Many people's expressions were very unsightly. This Wu Luanhui was despicable and was different from the person they had heard about. This was really too shameful. They couldn't lower their statuses and act like this. Furthermore, Wu Luanhui couldn't truly kill his opponent by doing this, so it couldn't be said to be an effective and ruthless method. Doing this would only reveal wisps of despicable aura. Taoist Jin Lin sighed and said, I finally know why Brother Wu can fight against Demon Chu Feng. Some people deeply felt the same way when they heard what was said. Yen Luo from the corpse race was so angry that he laughed and mocked, You're so shameless. You're no better than that human trafficker. Bastard, despicable. I'm going to refine your soul in a while. In the distance, the people from Damring Pure Land were also gasping in amazement. There were still people watching the battle even further away, but they were also speechless. As expected, a person who can fight Demon Chu Feng to a stalemate isn't just strong in strength, but similarly evil. Someone sighed with emotion. In fact, they wanted to say some unpleasant words, but they didn't dare to. Is it interesting? Ying Zhexian's temperament was clear and cold. She was like a fairy of the moon that had descended to the mortal world. She only said a few simple words and appeared to be slightly disrespectful. It's very interesting. I said before that I would overturn that ghost in 2 moves, so I naturally have to fulfill my promise. Chu Feng had a smile on his face. This kind of attitude made everyone angry. Just to fulfill his promise? Without a doubt, if he chose to break out of the encirclement, he had a certain probability of success just now, but he didn't do that. Instead, he chose to torment Yen Luo. Was he provoking everyone? In the distance, colorful soul light circulated in Qin Luoyin's eyes. She realized that something big was going to happen. That was because this was Chu Feng and not the incorporeal Wu Luanhui. Based on her understanding of Chu Feng, such splashing and gushing air was definitely a big move. She felt that Chu Feng was intentionally teasing everyone's heartstrings and stirring up their emotions. They followed his rhythm and definitely accumulated power. This was very Chu Feng. It was very obvious that many people were infuriated by Chu Feng. However, Jin Lin, Ying Zhexian, Winged Godhead, and the others were very calm. They didn't change their original intentions and locked onto Chu Feng. In short, these people wanted to kill him even more as they pressed forward. Meanwhile, Chu Feng was falling back. Why don't you use your mouth to kill us? We're waiting for you. Superfluous combat physique shouted coldly. The murderous intent of the group surged. I'll massacre all of you as you wish, Chu Feng said calmly. Everyone was on guard. There were even people who directly attacked to prevent any unforeseen events from happening. Chu Feng transformed into a beam of light and slid along an indescribable trajectory to avoid the soul light that was blasting towards him. At the same time, a grand spiritual sound wave was emitted from his mouth. Lin Bing Do Zhe all number group Qian Xing. This kind of sound resounded through the area. Jin Lin from the Dao race was so shocked that he was dumbstruck. Chapter 784. Taoist Jin Lin was truly shocked. What did he hear? Wasn't this the ancient mantra technique that appeared after the Tao race's breathing technique was developed to the extreme? Wu Luanhui knew it too? Even someone as calm as Taoist Jin Lin was shaken for a split second. That was because he only dabbled in it slightly and couldn't completely grasp it. The Tao race's 9 syllables incantation had a shocking origin. The clan elder once said that it should be a technique passed down from the Yang realm. It was very difficult for them to cultivate it in the Yin realm because the Tao race's breathing technique wasn't complete and lacked sufficient Yang qi. According to the Tao race's old ancestor, some powerful breathing techniques in this universe originated from the Yang realm. Over the endless years, the various races continuously accumulated and carried out repairs. Its power was much stronger than the incomplete technique, but it also lost some special spirituality of the Yang realm breathing technique. Jin Lin knew that even the Tao race's ancient ancestor only studied the 3-syllable mantra of fighting, arriving, and being. This was a taboo divine skill. Without the Tao race's breathing technique from the Yang realm, it was too difficult to completely grasp it. The others were also stunned because they all knew that this was the Tao race's legendary taboo divine skill. It seemed to only exist in legends and didn't appear in the world. Huh! While everyone was fearful and bewildered, they discovered that Wu Luanhui's wonderful technique wasn't that terrifying. Bang! Chu Feng confronted someone and blasted a genius flying backward. He coughed up large mouthfuls of blood, which was formed from spiritual power. It was even more serious than real blood gurgling out. Although its destructive power was extraordinary, there was still a huge disparity compared to the Tao race's legendary taboo divine skill that could kill gods and Buddhas if they stood in its way. Kill! Chu Feng roared loudly. Then, he stretched out his arms and drew a complex trajectory that made everyone tremble. They thought that the true killing move was about to appear, but in the end he decisively ran away. Furthermore, he shouted at O Yezi, "The wind is tight, pull away!" Everyone wanted to strangle him. This was really all bark and no bite. Was he teasing everyone again like last time? Over and over again, this was intolerable. He's leaving just like that? I still want to stab this yellow-haired baldy to death. Ouyang Feng shouted from afar. At this time, Shi Hong didn't make a move. It was because after the Buddhist race's protector Vajra could move, he went crazy and strongly requested Shi Hong to kill Yi. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to take it. At this moment, when Shi Wu heard Ouyang Feng deliberately mention the word stab in a wretched manner and gestured at him with the golden soul saber, he immediately flew into a rage and charged over in a frenzy. Run! The Evolver army we're waiting for isn't here yet. We can only run. Chu Feng shouted. When everyone heard this, they immediately felt a bellyful of anger. Sure enough, he was just bluffing. He dared to play with their heartstrings so presumptuously. He deserved to die. So, apart from the 2 people from the Buddhist race, almost all of them rushed towards Chu Feng. More than 100 Evolvers were enraged and went all out. Their soul light interweaved and shattered the ground in front of them. In the distance, Qin Luoyin sighed lightly. As she had expected, Chu Feng was either running away or about to unleash a big move. Now, it seemed like the former was the case. Wu Luanhui, you're courting death. Yen Luo of the corpse race let out a low roar from behind with an ice-cold killing intent. He was severely injured, and now, he swore to kill his opponent. Buzz. Jin Lin of the Tao race immediately used his trump card. He spat out a wisp of qi when he opened his mouth. After that, this qi divided into 3. This was the Tao race's terrifying divine skill. It took the true meaning of Tao begets 1, and 3 begets all things. In a split second, the 3 wisps of qi shone and transformed into glaring light swords. After that, they erupted once again and transformed into hundreds and thousands of spiritual light swords. They were terrifying beyond compare as they flew towards Chu Feng in a densely packed manner. This was a divine skill. Chu Feng moved his body at extreme speed and used a divine skill like the world's end near at hand. He was like a phantom as he constantly changed his position, but his soul bell was still pierced by the light swords. One could imagine that he would definitely be injured by this kind of divine skill if he didn't have the soul bell's defense. Of course, the main reason was because there were too many enemies. More than 100 evolvers attacked at the same time and hunted him down. It was simply an unstoppable spiritual energy flood. Chu Feng's body seemed to be burning as his yang qi surged. He constantly changed his position as he sprinted on the wasteland, causing the places he passed through to explode continuously. The wasteland caved in and rubble flew into the sky. You've exhausted your limited abilities. Are you going to act despicable again? Are you going to run again? Yen Luo laughed loudly as he chased after him. With so many people attacking, it caused Chu Feng to be injured. Blood dripped from the corner of his mouth as his body staggered several times. There were many times when he was almost completely killed by everyone's interweaving multicolored soul light. Many people were envious as they stared at Chu Feng's soul bell. This was truly an extraordinary spiritual weapon. It was truly too astonishing. They were convinced that if he didn't have this bell protecting his body, Wu Luanhui would have been killed a long time ago. Chu Feng sprayed blood along the way as he sustained heavy injuries. Bang! Ying Zhixian charged over and her fist shone. She was clearly a graceful and elegant woman who was as elegant as a fairy, but now her attack was so peerlessly tyrannical and her might was matchless. Her fist light pressed down on everyone in the surroundings until they dimmed. Their spiritual energy simply couldn't be compared to hers. Chu Feng's expression changed as he rapidly evaded. After that, the ground there exploded with a boom and an abyss appeared. A large expanse of black baleful aura soared from the ground as a burial pit appeared. Suppress! Taoist Jin Lin lightly shouted as his palm and fingers shone as he used the Tao race's secret technique to attack Chu Feng. With a whoosh, Chu Feng evaded once again, but the attacks from the others smacked over like raindrops. His soul bell rang incessantly as Chu Feng coughed up large mouthfuls of blood from the shock. That was because his spiritual energy was flowing away as his entire body was sent flying. So it turns out that you're really bluffing. Then die. The so-called Wu Luanhui will be removed from the list today. The corner of superfluous combat physique's mouth revealed a hint of a cruel smile. Yen Luo laughed even louder as he felt incomparably carefree as he said, "Haha, you're nothing more than this. I even thought that you could really defy the heavens. Who do you think you are to dare to provoke us, the successors of top-notch orthodoxies? Wu Luanhui, do you think that you can stir up trouble like him just because you're able to fight against Chu Feng?" Purple Cloud Golden Body was also ridiculing him. A cold smile hung on her face as she said, "Demon Chu Feng is only doing this because he occupies an absolute geographical position on Earth. If he really dares to enter the starry sky, he'll suffer a terrible loss sooner or later and die without a burial ground." At this moment, Chu Feng didn't utter a word as he fled with all his might. From one place to another, he left this wasteland in a state of desolation. "I say, old Wu, can you do it?" Ouyang Feng shouted. He was a little anxious as he had already charged over. He was afraid that Chu Feng would die here. "Leave quickly. Retreat quickly according to the path that I've pointed out to you." This time, Chu Feng transmitted his voice secretly. He was incomparably solemn as he called out to him to immediately take action. At this moment, not only did Shi Wu chase down to fight Ouyang Feng to the death, but Shi Hong also came over. Upon seeing this, Chu Feng roared at them, "Om ma and I pad me hum." Even if Shi Hong had a solemn and dignified appearance, his face couldn't help but twitch at this moment. This Wu Luanhui had ruined the Tao race's 9-syllable incantation, and now he was scheming against the Buddhist race's 6-syllable incantation? He immediately took action and participated in the encirclement and annihilation of Chu Feng. The Buddhist race's unique golden light illuminated the world, making him look like a sage who delivered the world from suffering. But now, he was indifferent and resolute. The Buddhist race's large handprints exploded in this place, and the sonic boom was deafening. The pressure on Chu Feng rose sharply. He could practically die at any time. But at this moment, his eyes were glowing with an astonishing luster as he muttered, "This time, it's enough. As you all wish, I'll massacre you." All of a sudden, he disappeared from his original spot. This shocked everyone. After that, they discovered that the place where he stood just now was flickering with runes as they constructed a bizarre pattern. That was a domain. "Let the banquet begin," shouted Chu Feng from afar. There was a boom as the space between his brows shone continuously and bombarded the ground. This area suddenly became resplendent and the earth was shaking as it rumbled. The ground was densely covered in dazzling pattern marks. For a moment it was illuminated as if it was burning. "Retreat!" The winged godhead was horrified as he quickly soared into the sky. In reality, Jin Lin, Shi Hong, and Ing Zhixian's reactions were faster than the last. All of them soared into the sky and fled at top speed. They had a premonition that the situation was far from reassuring. Those marks on the ground were all areas that they had passed through before. They were all once battlefields that were bombarded continuously. Now, all kinds of rune pattern marks actually appeared and formed a domain. They vaguely felt that Wu Luanhui was using their spiritual energy just now to carry out a terrifying sculpting and irrigation in this area. In reality, this was indeed the case. Chu Feng took the risk to play with everyone's heartstrings again and again, provoking them to chase after him. According to his rhythm, he was taking advantage of the chaos to borrow their energy to carve and activate a domain in this area. "Run!" Many people were shouting. However, the true danger wasn't on the ground. Even if they soared into the sky and reacted quickly, it was still a little too late. Crack! In the distance, those few blood-colored mountain peaks shone and terrifying blood-colored lightning flew out one after another as it struck toward this side. That kind of lightning was too terrifying. A few people exploded under the scarlet lightning on the spot with a bang. They immediately turned into divinity granules and couldn't be more dead in this world. Even that silver Tyrannosaurus at the perfect golden body realm couldn't withstand the lightning that flew down from the blood-colored mountain peaks and was struck until it was heavily injured, let alone these people. How can it strike this place from such a far distance? Some people were stupefied. They were very puzzled as they fled for their lives. That was because their battlefield was sufficiently far away from the blood-colored mountain peak. They had long since verified that they wouldn't provoke the blood-colored lightning there, but now they were suffering a great calamity. Rip! Another patch of scarlet lightning flew over. It was as resplendent as the sunset glow. In the end, 6 people screamed in unison before they exploded and turned into divinity granules. "How was it? Was it as you wished?" shouted Chu Feng. He and Ouyang Feng drew support from a special domain to teleport out of the battlefield. That was a type of transportation domain. It couldn't be compared to a transmission domain, but it was very suitable for moving them away from the battlefield. By the time the others reacted, Chu Feng had already activated the spiritual light beam between his eyebrows. This caused the land to churn and change the direction of the domain. How does he know about domains? Even Taoist Jin Lin and the others who rushed into the sky and wanted to cross over encountered a life and death crisis. They were entangled by the blood-colored lightning that flew over. Chi. At the crucial moment they used all kinds of escape method. They activated their soul weapons and used the death substitution talisman in their souls. They used everything they had. However, these people were still in a miserable state. Some of them were pierced through and turned into a rain of light in an instant. This area was very far from the blood-colored mountain peak. It was originally very safe and wouldn't attract lightning attacks, but Chu Feng was a domain master and had already thoroughly researched this area. He borrowed everyone's strength to move the earth veins here and set up a lightning Dao domain that could draw in lightning. As a result, those lightning bolts on the distant blood-colored mountain peaks were directly attracted over and bombarded indiscriminately. "Let's go!" shouted Chu Feng as he indicated Ouyang Feng to charge into the sky. There was a whirlpool there that was drawing in the rain of light to send the dead back to their original universe. Clang! As soon as the soul bell rang, the large black bell above Chu Feng's head emitted black light. It restrained the 6 balls of light rain and enveloped them. After that, he activated his mutant technique with all his might. When he walked out of the large bell a moment later, many divinity granules overflowed from his body before turning into flying ashes again. However, many of them were left in his body in the end and fused with him. He smelted a portion of the divinity granules of the 6 universe geniuses respectively. In a split second, Chu Feng's injuries were healed. His whole body felt comfortable and comfortable. "This feast tastes too wonderful!" Chu Feng laughed loudly. At this moment, Ouyang Feng was also incomparably excited. He used his mutant technique and the soul bell to refine a few balls of light rain. Ah! Below, many people screamed miserably. Not to mention the others, even Jean Lin's death substitute talisman exploded once in this short period of time. He avoided death with difficulty. At the same time, Shi Hong, the winged godhead, and Ying Zhixian were also battered and exhausted. They had been heavily injured a long time ago, and this was the result of fine electric arcs striking them after the large thunderbolts exploded. If they were directly covered by the thick blood-colored lightning, they would die without a doubt. Moreover, their perilous situation hadn't been completely resolved. A few blood-colored mountain peaks erupted and lightning bolts came one after another, almost completely covering this region. In a very short period of time, another dozen or so geniuses disintegrated and died tragically here. After that, a large expanse of light rain soared up. Chu Feng's spiritual energy was increasing. He stood guard not far from the whirlpool and didn't waste the slightest bit. He used the soul bell to draw in the rain of light and activated his mutant technique with Ouyang Feng to refine the divinity granules. The descendant of the corpse race, Yen Luo, was comparatively luckier as he escaped from that region with difficulty. The death substitute talisman on his body shattered and only half of his body remained at this moment. It was a tragic sight to behold, but being able to escape alive was already considered a great fortune. But what awaited him was a large black bell in the sky. With a bang, a bell wave was activated and a part of his body exploded once again. A rain of light danced in the air. "No!" he shouted loudly. However, the soul bell shone and restrained him before bringing him high up into the sky. Chu Feng smiled as he activated his mutant technique on him. Chapter 785. He had been captured alive. At this moment, Yen Luo's mood could be imagined. He really wanted to have the power to defy the heavens and beat up this youth in front of him. However, reality was so cruel. He was captured by the other party and imprisoned in the soul bell. He collided several times, shaking his soul until it swelled and almost disintegrated, but he still couldn't escape. At the same time, his spirit body was disintegrating and his spiritual power was rapidly flowing away. The mutant technique he coveted was used on his body by the other party. How could it be like this? He was shouting in his heart. He was filled with rage and extremely terrified at the same time. Would it be good to fall into this person's hands? From the beginning until now, he targeted Wu Luanhui again and again, but in the end, he was captured alive. He didn't dare to continue thinking about how miserable his end would be. Previously, he had always been pondering that after capturing Wu Luanhui, he had to slowly tidy him up and make this little bastard regret coming to this world. Every moment was torture. But in the end, he became a prisoner, and it came so suddenly. Wu Luanhui. Soul light flickered in the eyes of Yen Luo, the strongest descendant of the corpse race. He was truly afraid and didn't want to die, but what could he do now? Chu Feng smiled and slowed down the mutant technique. He was rather satisfied with this result. He felt refreshed after capturing this hateful enemy and looking down on him. Yen Luo clenched his fists tightly as he felt too uncomfortable. This Wu Luanhui was clearly going to die as he was surrounded and hunted by everyone, so how could he turn defeat into victory in an instant? He really wanted to vomit blood at this result. It was simply hard to accept. Not to mention him, even the hearts of the other tribulation takers were crumbling. This feeling of falling from heaven to hell was too terrifying. Yen Luo, you want to harm me again and again. You clearly know that Luo Shurong is colluding with the people of this world, yet you still keep splashing dirty water on me. Tell me, what promise did you get from Luo Shurong? What kind of benefits did he promise you? Chu Feng asked him. He wanted to understand what Luo Shurong and Yen Luo could obtain from the Evolver army in the end. He was pondering whether he could impersonate someone else to receive those benefits. If Luo Shurong knew in the underworld that he was still being used after his death, he would probably open the lid of his coffin and climb out to fight for his life. Yen Luo was extremely uncooperative, and there was resentment and hatred in the depths of his eyes. He was concealing it and maintaining his silence. However, Chu Feng didn't have the time to waste with him. Every minute was a reward and enjoyment, so he couldn't afford to waste any time. More and more light rained down. This was a feast. Dang! The soul bell vibrated and a large expanse of light rain was drawn in. At the same time, Chu Feng was also vibrating the bell wave as he bombarded Yen Luo once more. Ah! Yen Luo cried out loudly. Originally, he only had half of his body left, but now a large part of it exploded again and turned into a rain of light. After that, he saw a sunny smile appear on Wu Luanhui's pure little face as he operated his mutant technique to refine his multicolored soul light. Demon! Wu Luanhui, you're a great demon! His soul light was being refined and his body was disintegrating. Anyone would have collapsed at this moment if they were in his shoes. It was because this was spiritual energy, wrapping around a person's final life imprint. Being refined like this meant that he was about to completely disappear from this world. This was being erased, body and spirit about to be erased. Since you're not cooperating, I can only personally stew you over a small fire. Chu Feng was relatively calm. Ouyang Feng had always liked to spit at people. Not only did he know how to fly his saliva everywhere, but he also had a good foundation in injuring people on a spiritual level. He mocked, this ghost was so arrogant just now and threatened to annihilate us. How about now? He's like a grandson and has been reduced to a prisoner. How lamentable and laughable. Yen Luo's vision turned black when he heard this, and he spat out soul blood as soon as he opened his mouth. This was all Origin's spiritual energy, and he was about to collapse on his own without even needing Chu Feng to operate his soul bell to disperse it. At this moment, he was infuriated by this tyrant godhead who had a bird's beak and a black turtle shell on his back. His divine soul was greatly injured and his entire body was trembling. Look, this grandson is so scared that he's trembling. Ouyang Feng used his mutant technique to absorb the divinity granules over there as he hinted at Chu Feng. Oh Yi Jun Tuo's son, you're going too far. Yen Luo roared as he coughed up blood. Ouyang Feng, #Yen%Yen. His face darkened all of a sudden. He was clearly reprimanding people and was in a good mood, but the words, Jun Tuo's son, immediately made him look as though he had eaten a dead mouse. His face was so gloomy that it made people suspect that a torrential downpour was about to happen here. Crackle! Ouyang the toad charged over and gave Yen Luo a good beating as he desperately beat him up. He felt that it wouldn't be enough to appease the resentment and indignation in his heart even if he directly slaughtered him. Roar! Oh! Yen Luo was on the verge of collapse at this moment. What kind of status did he have and how profound his cultivation was? But he was struck by blood-colored lightning and fell into the hands of this black swan with a turtle shell on his back. He had no dignity at all and was being kicked around like a ball. His damaged body was about to explode. Below, the group of people from Damning Pure Land were petrified because this unforeseen event was too sudden. Even further away, the bodies of the several hundred evolvers who had already left the battlefield earlier were also stiff as they looked at this scene in shock. It was too strange and terrifying. It was clearly Wu Luanhui who was about to die, but in the end, the stars rotated in a split second and the heaven and earth changed. Victory and defeat were reversed as a shocking change occurred. What did they see? Taoist Jin Lin was exploding. Such a powerful heaven-bestowed character, who was known as one of the best young evolvers in the universe, was actually blasted into pieces by lightning. If it wasn't for the death substitution talisman on him, his body and soul would have already been annihilated. Bang! One of Ing Zhexian's arms disappeared. Even if she was very strong and was a level stronger than her younger brother Ing Wudi and wasn't weaker than Taoist Jin Lin, she still couldn't block the blood-colored lightning. There was also that Shi Hong who possessed the purest bloodline of the Buddhist race. Buddha's blood flowed in his veins, and the yang energy in his soul surged like a golden blazing sun. He oppressed the others until they were about to suffocate. His strength was unfathomable, but he was also exhausted from fleeing for his life now. He had also exploded once and the death substitution talisman died in his place once. This battlefield was really too terrifying. In just a short moment, there were already several tens of people who were struck by the lightning that flew over from the blood-colored mountain peak and exploded on the spot. No one could block energy of this level. Even the silver Tyrannosaurus at the perfect golden body realm would suffer heavy injuries after being struck, let alone these people. In the sky, Chu Feng's entire body was shining as he was enveloped by divinity granules. Spiritual energy was everywhere inside the soul bell, and it was the purest light rain of divinity. His entire body was warm and cozy as he was being nourished by the most beneficial substances. The injuries he received in the great battle were all healed. He was surrounded and hunted in a battle not long ago and was attacked by a group of top-notch figures. He almost died on several occasions, but now, his spiritual energy was increasing, his spirit body was condensing, and his yang energy was vigorous. His entire body was becoming stronger at every moment. This was an unimaginable feast, and Chu Feng's spiritual body was becoming increasingly resplendent. If this continued, his strength would increase explosively and his soul light and so on would undergo a transformation. Now, he felt that it was a little wasteful because the surrounding light rain was flying over in cluster after cluster. It was much faster than the speed at which they refined it. There were too many divine substances inside the soul bell, and the light rain was so concentrated that it almost couldn't contain it anymore. There were even a few clusters of light rain that directly rushed into the vortex and returned to the original universe. Those people were lucky. Clang! The soul bell trembled and Yen Luo cried out loudly. He was completely shattered, and only a little spiritual light ball was left behind. That was because Chu Feng didn't want to waste the space inside the soul bell and wanted to quickly dispose of him. Yen Luo cried out in horror, "Don't! I'll tell you the truth because Luo Shurong promised me the mutant technique. Don't kill me!" He was terrified at this juncture because if he died like this, He would be completely annihilated and wouldn't be able to resurrect in the original universe. This was a thorough death. However, Chu Feng didn't pay attention to him and circulated the mutant technique with all his strength, making him howl like a trapped beast. At the final instant before death, he experienced the most terrifying thing in his life. Yen Luo experienced what despair was. His heart was crumbling and he was terrified, but he was powerless to change anything. A patch of light rain was resplendent as a large amount of divinity granules were absorbed by Chu Feng. His spiritual body was increasing explosively, but Yen Luo had completely disappeared. I feel that my soul force has increased by more than twofold. Ouyang Feng's voice was trembling. This was such an astonishing good fortune. This kind of harvest made his blood boil. Meanwhile, Chu Feng's harvest was even greater. His soul light was dazzling like a god standing in the sky as a large patch of light rain gathered around him. His spiritual energy had long since surpassed the Cloud Eater realm. Even though it was extremely wasteful to circulate the mutant technique and the divinity granules absorbed in the end was less than 10%, it couldn't be compared to the great quantity. Dozens of people came down. This was truly an astonishing good fortune. At this moment, there was someone on the battlefield who wanted to break free. It was Taoist Jin Lin. His death substitution talisman had shattered twice, and he finally broke free from the range of the blood-colored lightning. Bang! In the next moment, Chu Feng moved and Ouyang Feng dove down with him to stop Taoist Jin Lin. He didn't want to give this person a chance. Taoist Jin Lin, come. I want to exchange pointers with you in the Tao race's 9 syllables incantation. This way please, said Chu Feng with a smile. With a bang, Chu Feng steered the soul bell and charged over. He absolutely wasn't courteous as he directly blasted out sound waves to kill. Under normal circumstances, Jin Lin naturally wouldn't be careless and would just start the battle. But now, even though he had the death substitution talisman, he was still struck by the blood-colored lightning in the process of escaping. Part of his body exploded and he lost quite a bit of soul force. So much so that he was missing a part of his soul. Bang! At this moment, the soul bell shone and the spiritual energy that was blasted out was too vigorous. The main reason was that Chu Feng's current strength had increased explosively. His own strength had increased by several times and was even more formidable than before. Jin Lin turned around and fled as he rapidly evaded, but this bell wave was like a ripple and had a diffuse nature. He couldn't evade it, and even though he used his soul weapon to block it, he was still severely impacted. He spat out a mouthful of soul blood, which was spiritual energy. His entire person was sent flying and his soul weapon was trembling and rumbling. Immeasurable deity, Taoist Jin Lin, come, let's exchange pointers again. As Chu Feng spoke, he violently shook the soul bell and blasted out 18 bell waves in one breath. This kind of scene was too terrifying. That brightly colored soul light flew out through the bell waves and practically killed gods and Buddhas in their way. Bang! Taoist Jin Lin's soul weapon was shaken to the point of cracking. A ripple charged over and caused his right arm to explode. This kind of attack power made his expression change abruptly. Chu Feng's current soul force was vigorous and incomparable. How could someone like Taoist Jin Lin, who had been heavily injured by the blood-colored lightning, block it? Jin Lin was rather decisive. He didn't hesitate in the slightest as he charged toward the vicinity of the blood-colored lightning and directly avoided Wu Luanhui's sharp edge. Hey, Calf's Nose, don't leave. Your grandfather Ouyezi is here too and wants to get closer to you, shouted Ouyang Feng from behind. Whoosh! At this moment, Ying Zhixian broke out of the encirclement in a split second and abruptly charged out. Her death substitution talisman had also exploded twice. In fact, she escaped danger earlier than Jin Lin, but she didn't rush out immediately. Now, she took advantage of the time when Chu Feng was dealing with Jin Lin's avatar to decisively charge out. However, Chu Feng suddenly turned around and chased after her in a split second. He instantly cut off her path in front of him as he shook the soul bell and directly bombarded her. Everyone's expressions changed. Wu Luanhui wanted to annihilate everyone and didn't want to let a single one of them off. Even someone as strong as Jin Lin was obstructed, and now, Ing Zhixian was also obstructed. Was he trying to cover the sky with one hand and strangle all the geniuses? Chapter 786. Supremely Righteous Luanhui King? Everyone who heard this wanted to curse. Supremely Righteous Luanhui King? Regardless of whether it was Shihong, Superfluous Combat Physique, and the others who were currently covered by the blood-colored lightning, or the people from Damning Pure Land who were watching the battle from outside the battlefield, and the hundreds of evolvers further away, all of them wanted to curse in unison. This so-called supremely righteous was simply unparalleled. Everyone felt that those cultivators who spread this kind of words should be beaten to death. They had no foresight and no integrity. How could such a glorious image be placed on this black person? It was too deceitful. Ever since they saw Wu Luanhui's lack of morality, bottom line, and integrity today, a group of people wanted nothing more than to skin him alive. At this moment, Ing Zhixian's face darkened. This was the third most beautiful woman under the starry sky. She was exceptionally charming and devastatingly beautiful. In addition to that otherworldly temperament, she was as elegant as a fairy treading the waves. But now she had this kind of attitude. Her forehead was covered densely with black lines. Even though she was in her soul form, she still looked like this. One could imagine her mood. She had never experienced this kind of calamity. Her arm had been blasted away by lightning. Moreover, that death substitution talisman had been shattered twice in succession, which meant that she had died twice. This kind of thing was too terrifying. She was actually killed. Now that she had escaped and finally got rid of the blood-colored lightning, she encountered Wu Luanhui again. Moreover, this fellow's skin was boundlessly thick. He shouted Supremely Righteous Luanhui King, which was really unbearable. Ing Zhixian didn't say anything else and immediately attacked first. A beam of 5-colored soul light blasted over. That was a terrifying divine technique formed after 5 kinds of special abilities were fused together. Everyone in the distance was astonished. This was the legendary 5-colored divine light. When cultivated to the highest realm, it could sweep through all living things and leave nothing untouched. The so-called 5-colored divine light was 5 kinds of divine clouds and immortal mists condensed from soul light. Generally speaking, it contained the power of the 5 elements: metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. When developed to a state of perfect balance, its power was enormous. It really is the 5-colored divine light. This Ing Zhixian is too terrifying. She actually cultivated this kind of peerless divine technique. Someone cried out in surprise not far away. At the Cloud Eater realm, a few kinds of rare multicolored lights and immortal mists could be combined to develop a few kinds of battle techniques that belonged solely to one. Legend had it that someone could devour 10 kinds of the strongest multicolored lights and immortal mists and could develop 10 kinds of peerless battle techniques that belonged solely to him. They were known as the 10 ultimate techniques and were invincible. There was once someone who used this technique to defeat all of his peers in the world and was unrivaled. However, it was too difficult to practice. At the same time, this was not absolute. In the Cloud Eater realm, there were people who developed a battle technique that could break all techniques with a single technique. For example, there was someone who devoured many types of terrifying divine multicolored light and immortal mist, which was enough to cultivate many types of battle skills that belonged solely to him. However, in the end, he only developed a single technique. This was similarly extremely terrifying and powerful. It was rumored that Jin Lin was walking this path. The 10 ultimate techniques, 1 technique to break all techniques, 9 extremes technique, and so on were all famous and well known. However, there were also other unparalleled techniques in this world that very few people could successfully cultivate. The 5-colored divine light was one of them. It required 5 types of 5 elements: divine light and immortal mist that could fuse with the soul light, fusing them into one's spiritual energy instead of fusing with one's physical body. It had to continuously develop and finally reach a perfect balance, thus forming a 5-colored soul light that possessed enormous destructive power. The 5-colored divine light was said to be able to sweep away all living things. This kind of divine technique was simply too difficult to defend against. Even those who had mastered the 10 ultimate arts might not be able to block it. They would only know after fighting it. Now, Ying Zhixian actually directly unleashed the 5-colored divine light and swept it over. She wanted to descend upon Chu Feng's soul bell and seize it. Clang! When Chu Feng saw that she was so resolute and seized the initiative to launch an attack on him, he naturally wasn't polite in the slightest. He activated the soul bell and shook out terrifying spiritual energy. The ripples spread and the bell waves became more and more grand. In the end, it charged over like a stormy wave. Huh! Chu Feng was gobsmacked. The black soul bell that was floating above his head was swaying and was almost about to leave his body. This was truly astonishing. Since the start of the battle, this was the first time something like this had happened. His weapon was almost snatched away. Bang! In the end, he shook the soul bell once more. That spiritual ripple surged and erupted with terrifying might. A wave of bell waves swept over and collided with the 5-colored divine light, finally repelling it. The main thing was that Chu Feng's soul force was too vigorous. At this moment, his spiritual power had more than doubled compared to not long ago. Even if a divine technique like the 5-colored divine light was world-shocking and extraordinary, it was still difficult for it to be effective in the face of absolute power. Moreover, Ying Zhixian's body was damaged and her soul was injured. She escaped from the area covered by the blood-colored lightning with difficulty. Her body was full of cracks, so it was naturally difficult for her to activate the 5-colored divine light for a long time. Her invincible technique had been broken. Bang! At the same time, the bell waves swept over and struck Ying Zhixian, sending her flying. She spat out large mouthfuls of soul blood, which also meant that her spiritual power was flowing away. Even though Chu Feng had severely injured her, his heart was still moved when he saw this woman who was as elegant as a fairy. His eyes were burning with passion as he felt the strength of the 5-colored divine light. With such a vigorous soul force, wouldn't he be able to sweep away an entire generation if he successfully cultivated the 5-colored divine light? His heart was abnormally lively as he thought about the 10 ultimate techniques and the 5-colored divine light. Which one was more suitable for him? F***ck. This little girl is so powerful. The golden soul blade in my hand almost flew over just now. It's too strange. At this moment, Ouyang Feng was also trembling with fear as he let out a strange cry. Clang! Chu Feng struck the bell once more. Even though he had an idea in his heart and was pondering over it, his hands didn't stop as he activated the soul bell once more. A wave of bell waves flew out with dazzling spiritual energy. Ying Zhixian couldn't avoid it. Her soul was injured now, so it wasn't suitable for her to use that strenuous 5-colored divine light again. She took out a shield, which was naturally a soul weapon, to block the bell waves. Clang! That shield cracked before exploding. That was because Chu Feng didn't hold back in the slightest. He didn't have the slightest bit of tenderness toward the fairer sex as he dealt a killing blow. Ying Zhixian's left arm exploded under the bell waves. Her body staggered and flew out once more. The main reason was that the power of Chu Feng's soul light was too strong at this moment. In addition, the soul bell was formed from the Yang realm seed and possessed unfathomable might. When the two of them combined, it was as easy as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Yingzhixian retreated decisively and headed toward the area covered by the blood-colored lightning in order to evade it. Fairy Ying, don't be in a hurry to leave. I'm here to discuss the Tao with you, the princess of the quasi-saint race, and discuss how to cultivate to become a true immortal. Chu Feng laughed heartily as he dealt a killing blow right away and used his trump card. At this moment, Yingzhixian sighed softly and said, "What a pity. I still wanted to take care of an opponent like you on behalf of Chu Feng, but I didn't expect to be heavily injured by the blood-colored lightning. My strength decreased sharply and it's hard for me to fight for a long time." When he heard what she said, Chu Feng was immediately stunned. He was Chu Feng, but he had transformed into Wu Luanhui. He was somewhat absent-minded. Yingzhixian attacked Wu Luanhui incessantly. Was she attacking on behalf of him, Chu Feng? Chu Feng was stunned and his expression was rather strange. Whoosh! In a split second, Yingzhixian fled and returned to the edge of the blood-colored lightning. She stood together with Jin Lin and Ying Wudi as they waited for an opportunity to break out of the encirclement once more. In reality, Yingzhixian had been paying attention to Chu Feng's expression all along when she glanced back just now. When she saw that he seemed to be in a daze for a split second, her expression immediately became peculiar. Even if Chu Feng concealed it very quickly, he himself had already realized that Yingzhixian should have discovered it. Yes, something's wrong. Chu Feng quickly woke up with a start again. He felt that Yingzhixian might have been tricking him. She might have discovered something unusual and felt that he was Chu Feng. She deliberately said that just now not only to probe him but also to seize the opportunity to calmly escape to the vicinity of the blood-colored lightning. At this moment, Chu Feng felt that Yingzhixian couldn't figure him out for a moment. This woman was very impressive. "You've discovered who I am?" Chu Feng revealed a peculiar expression. However, he revealed a smile. So what if everyone here knew who his true identity was? He didn't care. This wasn't the original universe, so this group of geniuses couldn't notify the old monsters in their clans to surround and annihilate him. Chu Feng could completely move unhindered in this place, and he didn't fear anyone. Furthermore, even if he was exposed, everyone would forget everything here when he returned and entered the original universe. He would still be very safe when he returned to the Divine Palace in damning Pure Land. Rumble! The sound of the bell was long and drawn out. Chu Feng urged the Black Yang Realm seed, and the soul bell drew over the spiritual power light that soared once again. He rapidly circulated the mutant technique to refine it. In just a short period of time just now, another dozen or so people died an unnatural death. They were struck by lightning and shattered on the spot, turning into a rain of light. But now, many pure divinity granules flew out of these people's soul light. They were imprisoned by Chu Feng with the big bell and rapidly refined and absorbed. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, Chu Feng's soul force was becoming stronger and he could sense that his soul light was becoming more and more dazzling. This was simply his cultivation holy land as his strength was growing every moment. After my soul light becomes stronger, it'll be very easy for me to cultivate the 10 ultimate techniques or to develop the 5-colored divine light. Everyone's complexions were pale where the blood-colored lightning was. They were in an abyss of suffering and could die at any moment, yet Wu Luanhui, that great demon, was rapidly becoming stronger here. This was simply unbearable for them. This was too devilish. There was too much spiritual energy light rain because the blood-colored lightning in the field was merciless. If a person was struck by it, that person would undoubtedly die. Not every genius had a death substitute talisman, or it could be said that it was pretty good to have one. It was also because of this that Chu Feng deduced that Luo Shurong's position in the primal chaotic deity palace wasn't that high. If not, why didn't he have a death substitute talisman? As a result, Chu Feng and Ouyang Feng couldn't refine it even if they circulated the mutant technique with all their might when the light rain flew up. They wasted a portion of it. This was a gluttonous banquet. The duo's soul light became more and more resplendent. Their soul force increased sharply and their strength rose explosively. Those people were simply in despair. At this place, everyone revealed complex expressions. This was too terrifying. Wu Luanhui possessed too much of a demonic nature. In the end, he could actually be this terrifying. Break out of the encirclement. At this moment, someone else muttered and discussed attacking. After these people broke away from the blood-colored lightning, they didn't rush over immediately. They hesitated and paced back and forth. Whoosh, 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 several people charged over together. Chu Feng sneered and urged his soul bell fiercely. The black-colored bell body rumbled and the bell waves that erupted were even more terrifying than before. Clang! A muffled groan came from the front on the spot. Even people as powerful as Jin Lin, the winged godhead, and Yuan Shiqing couldn't withstand it. Once this bell wave was unleashed, it swept through all directions and attacked indiscriminately. It was extremely suitable for group battles. These people's expressions changed. Wu Luanhui's spiritual energy was even more vigorous and more terrifying than before. It caused them to suffer heavy injuries, and they had no choice but to fall back again. Whoosh! At this moment, Shi Hong rushed over. He wanted to force his way through and struggle free. Boom! Chu Feng raised the large bell and smashed it over with all his might. Amit Ba! Shi Hong shouted loudly. However, he couldn't block Chu Feng at this moment. He was swept by the ripples that came from the bell body, and half of his body exploded with a bang. He had no choice but to flee into the blood-colored lightning region in a panic. Divine monk, your legs have fallen off! Chu Feng shouted from behind. He used the large bell to collect those two legs and shook them into a rain of light. He immediately used his mutant technique to extract divinity granules on the spot. Yellow hair, you come over too. I'll beat you to death. Ouyang Feng challenged Shi Wu. At this moment, everyone was terrified. They were getting weaker and weaker while Wu Luanhui and the tyrant godhead were getting stronger and stronger. Wouldn't they all have to die in the end? Shu Tai, I feel that my soul light has increased by a chunk again. Chu Feng smiled. Who exactly are you? Why do you know about domains? Superfluous Combat Physique roared furiously at this moment. His heart was dripping blood because the death substitution talisman had exploded 4 times in total. There was only one last chance left before he couldn't use this kind of divine talisman anymore. He would undoubtedly die if this continued. In reality, he wasn't the only one. The others were also bewildered and doubtful. They were suspecting that this Wu Luanhui actually had astonishing attainments in domains. It was too strange. Everyone was in danger mainly because they didn't guard against Wu Luanhui. He was actually a great domain expert. If Chu Feng was here, he reckoned he wouldn't have the chance to use it since he would be watched closely by everyone. However, Wu Luanhui was different. No one thought too much about it, and in the end they were tricked by his domain technique. Are you really Wu Luanhui? Yuan asked. She cut a sorry figure and was covered in injuries. Her curvy body was in a rather bad state. Chu Feng smiled. He knew that these evolvers weren't simple characters, and they began to doubt his identity. He didn't care. In this world, it didn't matter whether he was Wu Luanhui or Chu Feng. There wasn't much of a difference. As a result, he laughed heartily and said, You want to know who I am? Alright, I can tell you guys that there are 2 sides to this king. I'm the supremely righteous Luanhui king, but I'm also the other person who has missed you guys for a very long time. What the hell was supremely righteous? When they heard this kind of self-praise, the group of people really couldn't bear it anymore. They were quite angry. However, everyone was quivering and shivering. Wu Luanhui had another identity, Chapter 787. I don't see the ancients before me, and I don't see those who will come after me. I think of the long and drawn-out world of heaven and earth, and I'm shedding tears of sorrow. Chu Feng had a cynical and impassioned look on his face as he said, "The surging waters of the East are boundless since ancient times. I'm the only one awake and dejected, and I can only entrust myself to the next life. My other identity is the dejected past life monarch. Those geniuses who were covered by the blood-colored lightning. Yen #%*, everyone watching the battle from afar. Those who hated him wanted to curse him, and those who were uninvolved were also rather speechless. Everyone pricked up their ears as they waited for him to introduce himself and say what kind of background and roots he had. In the end, this Blackie had no morals and no integrity. He was disgracing the ancient language of the wise men of the past and speaking of an ineffable dejected past life monarch. Past life really corresponded to reincarnation. It was indeed him, and there was no mistake about it. But many people wanted to give him a beating. This Wu Luanhui really needed to be suppressed. He was absolutely running his mouth off. At this time, there should be a living being at the great circle of the golden body realm here to blast him into dregs and beat him up until he had no temper. Many people clenched their teeth in extreme hatred. F***CKU. At this moment, even the Buddhist race's guardian Vajra Shur Wu couldn't help but curse in a low voice. One could imagine how resentful he was. They all wanted to know whether or not Wu Luanhui had other origins. In addition, some people faintly guessed that he might be related to Chu Feng and were waiting for him to personally confirm it. In the end, they were exchanged for such an outcome. Everyone was unhappy because this Blackie was only teasing everyone in the end and didn't say anything. To hell with the dejected past life monarch. No one believed him. Ouyang Feng stared at Shur Wu and said, "Yellow-haired your sister. Try saying that again if you have the gut. Come here, I guarantee I won't beat you to death. I'll teach you how to chant the reincarnation past life scripture." Crack! Blood-colored lightning flickered in the distance, and a few more people were blasted into pieces. They turned into a rain of light and soared into the sky. Chu Feng calmly urged on the large bell to receive the rain of light. He began to activate the mutant technique again to absorb the divinity granules here. With the help of the death substitution talisman, some people managed to break free from the death vortex, but there was no way for them to escape completely. Several blood-colored mountain peaks formed the shape of a half-moon as they surrounded them from behind and blocked their path of retreat. Blood-colored lightning constantly flew over from that side, so their path of escape was blocked by Wu Luanhui. Chu Feng was becoming stronger, while they were constantly being weakened. If this continued, the outcome would be determined. "I really want to kill him," Superfluous Combat Physique muttered. He paid a huge price to break free from the blood-colored lightning zone and hid at the relatively safe edge. He stared at Chu Feng with incomparable hatred, and his eyes were about to spit fire. Amitabha Buddha, this Buddha also wants to get rid of him. Shur Wu's Buddha light shone. He was also incomparably furious. He wanted to kill Chu Feng, and he wanted to get rid of Ouyang Feng even more. In reality, Wu Luanhui was even more powerful than they had imagined. After activating his mutant technique and absorbing a large amount of divinity granules, he took the initiative to attack and force his way over. Boom! The soul bell vibrated as it attacked indiscriminately. In a split second, the bell wave ripples swept across everyone. To them, this was a life-and-death crisis. Wu Luanhui had personally charged over, so he was definitely going to start a massacre. Each and every one of them had long since suffered serious injuries from the lightning and were missing limbs. Clank, 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 as expected, this was a fierce attack. Even if Shi Hong, Winged Godhead, Jin Lin, Ing Zhixian, and many other great experts were gathered here, it was still extremely strenuous. The most crucial thing was that Chu Feng was sneering as he sacrificed one soul light after another to activate the domains that had been engraved under the ground earlier. He detonated this place once more to coordinate with his attack. Everyone's expressions changed. This was simply adding hail to snow as he forced them to their death. Wu Luanhui, you're too arrogant. Do you really think you can kill all of us by yourself? Everyone, we have to be united. Don't think about letting others exert themselves while you hide behind and wait to break out of the encirclement. If we attack together, we can most likely kill him even if we're all heavily injured. Superfluous Divine Physique shouted in a low voice. That's right. That makes sense. If we really work together, we can definitely kill this fiend. Purple Cloud Golden Body also spoke with twinkling eyes. Bang! In a split second, everyone indeed reacted because this was the truth. If they all wanted to count on others to risk their lives while they hid behind, then everyone would die in the end. First of all, Jean Lin's bizarre soul light flew out. This was a typical technique that could break all techniques with vast might. Ma! Ma! Shi Hong and Shi Wu even more so shouted out the incantations of the Buddhist race. From their mouths, an astonishing mysterious energy blossomed, transforming into complex symbols that flew forward. The ground cracked and then collapsed. The scene was terrifying and the destructive power was astonishing. Bang! A large expanse of symbols soared up from the domain laid down by Chu Feng as it collided with the various spiritual energies that everyone urged. In addition, there were also surging ripples emitted by his soul bell. A huge explosion occurred in this area. A fierce battle like this attracted blood-colored lightning to spread once more. The impact range was even further as it reached this area. Chu Feng decisively retreated. These people dodged in a panic. They cut a sorry figure and almost fell into the deathly lightning again. Chu Feng said, I really want to sell all of you and ask for all kinds of divine treasures from the old monsters in your race. But it's a little inappropriate. To be safe, it's still safest to turn you all into divinity granules. What did you say? Someone's divine soul trembled as he felt a more and more familiar aura. Human trafficker? Your great-uncle Wu Luanhui said he wants to sell all of you. He also wants to tell all of you that your great-uncle Wu is actually your beloved and respected great-uncle Chu. Wu Luanhui, who looked somewhat immature and inexperienced, spoke in a loud voice as he formally declared. This place exploded. Even though many people had long suspected it, they didn't have any proof because this Wu Luanhui's small face was too immature. He looked like he was only 14 or 15 years old and couldn't match up with Chu Feng. The most crucial thing was that Wu Luanhui's body flowed with human monarch blood, while the blood that Chu Feng spilled back then had been collected by some powerful races. He didn't have this kind of bloodline at all. Moreover, Wu Luanhui had once fought to the death with Chu Feng in front of many people. It was too deceptive. Motherf *****. Superfluous Combat Physique was the first to get angry. He felt like he was being played. It was actually the Demon King Chu Feng, that human trafficker, who was tangling and fighting with him. Many spectators in the distance were also dumbfounded. This elegant and beautiful youth was Chu Feng? This was too subversive. Luoyin, let's go and get rid of him. Damring Pure Land's senior sister spoke, and strongly recommended everyone to eliminate Chu Feng together. This was too ironic. This was Chu Feng they were talking about. They refused to let him participate in Damring Pure Land's distinguished meeting, but who would have thought that he would transform into Wu Luanhui with a shake of his body? He happily received the golden invitation and leisurely attended the meeting. This was too much of a slap in the face. Some disciples of Damring Pure Land were restless. Qin Luoyin said, Don't be rash. Didn't you see? Before he announced his true identity, he secretly carved many symbols in this area. He's waiting for the spectators to rush in. She understood Chu Feng too well. This shameless fellow had definitely carved another domain. Was this a precaution or a trap for damning Pure Land? I'm afraid that this group of people who have been struck by lightning will run away, so I made some arrangements. Chu Feng secretly transmitted his voice. Who are you trying to fool? You want to lure our people in. Qin Luoyin said. Chu Feng, Wu Luanhui, you damned human trafficker. You're too shameless. Superfluous Combat Physique roared with great indignation. In reality, everyone who was attacked by the blood-colored lightning wanted nothing more than to skin and swallow Chu Feng alive. They felt humiliated only to find out who the main character was now. Hi everyone, long time no see. I've missed you so much. Chu Feng laughed and greeted everyone. Immediately, the group of people was so angry that they were gnashing their teeth and white smoke was coming out of their noses. After thinking about it carefully, ever since this Wu Luanhui was no longer supremely righteous, his various ways of doing things were simply like Chu Feng. He was like that human trafficker. This fellow still had the face to say that they hadn't seen each other for a long time and that he missed them so much. This was mockery and provocation. It really made people want to slap him to death with the soles of their shoes. Dao friends, I really can't take it anymore. Can't we take him down? Kill him. Someone instigated. He really wanted to kill Chu Feng immediately. Old brothers and sisters, I feel like I've been separated from you for a long time. Don't be in a hurry to fight. Let's reminisce about the old days. Chu Feng bared his white teeth there as if he was asking for a beating. Yeah, I haven't sold saints and goddesses for a long time. I'm not used to it. Ouyang Feng nodded as well. Then, he spat out a torrential rain. He felt much more delighted to be able to spit as he pleased. Tyrant Godhead, O Yi! What's going on with you? Aren't you the son of ancient Saint Jun Tua? Someone shouted. Ouyang Feng, who was full of himself just a moment ago, immediately had dense black lines on his face when he heard what was said. He said angrily, What goddamned son of Jun Tua? I'm your grandpa Ouyang, Divine King Ouyang Feng. Do you understand? After he introduced himself like this, everyone's eyeballs dropped. This tyrant godhead was also fake. Was he that toad demon from Earth? Everyone wanted to curse. It was fine if they missed Chu Feng, but in the end, there was still a squint-eyed toad who spat everywhere to deceive everyone. It made them feel hurt. I'm warning all of you. I'll wipe out your 13 clans if anyone dares to say that Grandpa Ouyang is related to Jun Tua again. Everyone, can you bear with this? This is the great demon Chu Feng, that notorious human trafficker. Someone loudly transmitted his voice to the several hundred evolvers who were watching the battle in the distance. He wanted to encourage them to participate in the battle and said, other than that, he's despicable and shameless to the extreme. He appeared in the image of the mighty and honorable Wu Luanhui and deceived all of us. That damned, supremely righteous is an insult to us. Everyone, I propose that heroes rise together and punish this demon together. Chu Feng's spiritual power was extremely terrifying. If it was an ordinary person, they wouldn't be able to determine who was instigating and transmitting their voice in the dark. But now that he had absorbed too many divinity granules, he immediately determined the source. It was precisely the superfluous combat physique who was instigating in the dark. You said it? Chu Feng reacted in the first instance. He seized the initiative and launched a fierce attack as he charged forward. Bang! A great battle erupted. His objective was very clear. He abandoned everyone else and focused on attacking the superfluous combat physique. In the end, he blasted this person's body into pieces. Chu Feng then took out his soul bell and captured him alive. Brother Chu, if we knew it was you, we would definitely help you. You and I are people from the same camp. At the same time, the Yuan siblings secretly transmitted their voice to Chu Feng. Chu Feng, it's really you. Why are you doing this? You know that Xiao Xiao and you hit it off very well, and we don't have any enmity with the earth. We even fought a battle with Wu Luanhui for your sake. Ing Zhixian spoke unhurriedly. Chu Feng wasn't in a hurry to reply. Instead, he concentrated on activating the mutant technique and refined the two halves of the superfluous combat physique's body into divinity granules. No. The superfluous combat physique was horrified. His body and soul were going to be completely annihilated. However, Chu Feng didn't show any mercy at all. He pulled Ouyang Feng along as he circulated the mutant technique. He was afraid that he would let go of the few streaks of light rain from the superfluous combat physique. Their spiritual power was increasing. Ouyang Feng said, "This is a little wasteful. This is an outstanding and famous physique, the superfluous combat physique. The innocuous divine physique created Old Yak. If this fellow is alive and the blood medicine in his body is refined, we might be able to create a superfluous combat physique among our group of brothers." "That's reasonable." Chu Feng nodded. After that, he decisively made a decision. It could also be considered a kind of experiment. He broke off half of the superfluous combat physique's leg and let it escape. He let it escape into the vortex in the sky and returned to its original universe. The remaining parts were refined into divinity granules. Many people were dumbstruck when they saw this. They felt that this human trafficker was too cruel. "Do you think he can come back to life if I let one of his legs escape?" Chu Feng asked in a low voice. "After all, it's all spiritual power. Even if it's only half a leg, I reckon there will still be a few strands of life imprints. But I feel that most likely his memory will be severely damaged and his intelligence will be flawed. Will he become a living fool?" Ouyang Feng muttered. "Lock him up. It's fine as long as he's alive. We'll have the chance to use him to refine blood medicine in the future," said Chu Feng. Everyone heard that these two were worse than the other and worse than the other. It wasn't enough to refine his spiritual power here, and he still wanted to go back to the human world to refine his physical body. Everyone observed a moment of silence for the superfluous combat physique. Again. After that, Chu Feng fixed his gaze on the purple cloud golden body and wanted to hunt them down one by one. After a while, the purple cloud golden body let out a blood-curdling screech. He was refined into divinity granules by Chu Feng and Ouyang Feng. Only one of his legs was let go, allowing him to return to the vortex in the sky. In the original universe of this group of people, Damring Pure Land was rather restless. The spiritual bodies of more than 1,000 people returned to the Divine Hall at the same time. Their corporeal bodies moved and came back to life. This shook the minds of the old monsters of Damring Pure Land. This was too tragic. So many people had died at the same time, and their divine souls had returned. The losses were too great. That world had tens to hundreds of years, but the original universe had only lasted for a day. As a result, they saw the superfluous combat physique return very soon. Something wasn't quite right. That soul was only a foot? In a split second, the purple cloud golden body also returned, and it was still a foot. Following that, 1, 2, 3, it was a foot. The old monsters of Damring Pure Land simply didn't dare to believe it. They rubbed their eyes with all their might. Were they possessed? Such a strange thing had never happened in the past. Why do I feel like something big is going to happen? Why are they all feet? Wait a moment, they're about to wake up. Let's take a look at these spiritual bodies that have returned. Let's see if one foot after another can. This group of old monsters trembled and couldn't even continue speaking. They were worried and afraid because they felt that something big was going to happen. Could these people be resurrected or not? Even if they could, what state would they be in after they woke up? Chapter 788. One foot after another lined up neatly as they flew back from the dark vortex. This scene was too bizarre, and it made the group of old monsters from Damring Pure Land go crazy. Such a strange thing had never happened in the past. If a group of geniuses met with a big problem this time, there would be a big problem if damning Pure Land was willing to step in. He's awake. This little ancestor has finally recovered. Let's ask him what's going on. An old monster was pleasantly surprised. He heaved a sigh of relief after seeing superfluous physique open his eyes. The most important thing was that he was still alive. If his soul was injured, he could just slowly recover. Divine Son, how do you feel? An old woman revealed a kind smile and asked in a gentle voice. The superfluous combat physique made an action and pushed her old face away. It was very rude, and the face of the old female monster from damning Pure Land immediately darkened. This was simply too rude. She really wanted to flare up and teach this junior a lesson. However, at this time, superfluous physique sat down cross-legged. The light in his eyes flickered indeterminately as if he was thinking hard. He looked rather profound. Moreover, he slowly opened his mouth and said, "Who am I? Where did I come from? Where am I going?" The old woman wanted to give him a slap and teach him a lesson. After being rude to her, he still dared to be cocky here. However, an old monster at the side pulled her back and said, "Stop, the superfluous combat physique is truly extraordinary. He has entered the Tao and is in a wonderful state. Think about it carefully, the 3 questions he asked truly contain profound philosophies and concepts. This child is truly extraordinary. He is already thinking about such questions at such a young age. This is seeking the Tao." The old woman was startled. She nodded and said, "That makes sense." She also had a solemn expression. However, the truth of the matter was that the superfluous combat physique had been chopped off by Chu Feng, and only half of his foot was returned. His soul was so badly damaged that he couldn't even remember who he was. He was muttering to himself, vexed and trying hard to recall who he was and what was going on. This one is awake too. Why isn't he saying anything? Another person opened his eyes, but his gaze was cold and motionless as he stared ahead. This is the violet Tao body with purple blood flowing in his body. It's easy for people with this bloodline to comprehend the Tao. What's going on with him? Could it be that he's comprehending something? An old monster was suspicious. Reincarnation. The purple cloud Tao body finally spoke, and his eyes shone even more brilliantly. Then, he stopped moving and stared straight ahead. His eyes shone brilliantly, as if they were going to pierce through the void. One of the old monsters sucked in a breath of cold air and sighed. As expected of the purple cloud Taoist body. What exactly did he experience to comprehend reincarnation? It's amazing. It's a pity that he came back too early. Otherwise, his comprehension would have been even deeper. Let's not disturb him. Give him time to comprehend by himself. That's reincarnation. Beside him, the 2 old women felt the same way and nodded solemnly. In reality, the purple cloud Tao body hated Wu Luanhui to the core. He actually chopped him into pieces and only left one of his feet intact. His resentment and hatred were deep into his bones. He was muttering the word Luanhui because he hated Wu Luanhui. Unfortunately, his memory was too incomplete, so he forgot the word Wu. The Buddhist race's heaven-bestowed character has also awakened. An old woman stared at the Buddhist race's guardian of this generation, Vajra Shur Wu. She was very solemn because she was afraid that something would happen to him. That was because the Buddhist race was ranked at the very top in the universe. Their strength was too strong, and if something happened to their son of Buddha here, the situation would definitely be very bad. Son of Buddha Shur Wu, how do you feel? An old woman asked in a low voice because she felt that Shur Wu's eyes were too vacant and a little scattered. This made her heart thump and she was a little worried. However, in the next moment, Shur Wu suddenly spoke like thunder. He pointed to the sky with one hand and pointed to the ground with the other. He walked 7 steps in all directions and shouted, "In the heavens and on the earth, Only I am supreme. In a split second, all the old monsters in the shrine were shocked. They widened their eyes and stared at Sherwu, who was emitting golden Buddhist light from all over his body. He was fixed in place and didn't move an inch. Let's fall back and retreat. Don't disturb him. This is practically a true Buddha. His Buddhist nature is too strong. Is this enlightenment? He can't be trying to build the strongest foundation of the Buddhist race, right? The group of old monsters was shaken, and each and every one of them fell back, because they didn't want to disturb him. In reality, this was the release of the beautiful longing in the depths of Sherwu's heart, because he was too miserable in the other world. Not only did he let Chu Feng chop him up, but he also threw back a foot. He even let Ouyang Feng randomly stab him with the soul blade. This son of Buddha was bewitched and almost went crazy. He was greatly stimulated. At the final juncture, he longed to be a true Buddha and achieve an invincible body. In that case, he definitely wouldn't be suppressed. Moreover, he would certainly suppress and kill Great Demon Chu and that toad. Therefore, when his remnant soul returned, there was a kind of intense thirst for him to become stronger. As a result, the longing in his heart was reflected. The shrine in damning Pure Land was quiet. The group of old monsters fell back and prepared to leave this place, leaving the few heaven-bestowed geniuses to comprehend the Tao here. At the same time, they were also discussing who was the last to return in the end. I'm guessing it's Luo Shurong. After all, his cultivation is profound and he's from the primal chaotic deity palace. Correct, it should be him. Now, he's as steady as a boulder and is sitting cross-legged here. He might be the last to awaken. The group of old monsters thought like this. In reality, it was impossible for Luo Shurong to wake up even if everyone recovered because he was completely eliminated by Chu Feng. There was no soul light that could return. Yes, we'll just wait quietly and see what these few geniuses can comprehend. Let's see who will be the last to return. If they held this kind of thinking, the final result would absolutely be very splendid. In the other world, Chu Feng was displaying his demonic might. Now, he was truly displaying the style of a great demon. He eliminated the superfluous combat physique, killed the purple golden Tao body, and then killed Sherwu now. He was going all out and activating the soul bell to break one of Shihong's arms. He seized it and refined it inside the soul bell. Son of Buddha, you lost your arm. Why aren't you coming over to pick it up? Ahmed Bao. Shihong no longer had the dignified appearance of a magic treasure. The three corpses god flew into a rage and couldn't bear it anymore. He watched as the other party used the soul bell to shatter his arm to refine the divinity granules. He was boundlessly furious. Brother Yuan, I'm sorry. I didn't control it well just now and shook off one of your legs. In any case, this is spiritual power. You just need to recuperate for a period of time and you'll be able to make up for it. Don't be arrogant and rash, said Chu Feng. There was also one of Yuan Shurcheng's legs inside the large bell that transformed into a spiritual light rain. In the distance, Yuan Shurcheng's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. In addition, the winged godhead's face was also ashen. He was also missing a leg and wanted to go mad with hatred. Suddenly, Chu Feng's heart palpitated. He felt as if the end of the world had arrived. Then, he suddenly raised his head and looked at the distant peaceful end. His soul sensed something. At the same time, outside the battlefield, the silver-haired little Lolita also shouted, "How terrifying! I'm going to cry. I feel as if the sky is collapsing and the earth is caving in. A great calamity is descending." It had to be said that this little princess of the quasi-saint race was too sharp and far surpassed many people. She sensed it almost at the same time as Chu Feng. Bang! At the end of the horizon, a formless pressure pressed over. At this moment the others also sensed it, and their expressions changed in a split second. Torrential blood chi. It's extremely masculine. It's too terrifying. Run. Someone shouted. Clearly, that formless pressure was approaching too quickly. Now, everyone could already see the scarlet blood light soaring into the sky and enveloping the entire firmament. It was rapidly approaching like a perilous wave engulfing the heavens and earth. How terrifying of an existence was this! Run! The spectators all fled. Even Qin Luoyin didn't hesitate as she led the hundreds of damning Pure Land disciples away at top speed. If they continued to stay, they would undoubtedly die. That blood qi contained torrential yang qi, and it was too harmful to soul bodies like them. If it really charged over, it was enough to shatter many people, burn them, and turn them into ashes. At the end of the horizon, savage beasts roared and vicious birds let out long cries. There were extremely high-level evolvers in the sky and on the ground riding their mounts as they sped over. They were too fast, like a mountain flood bursting through a dike, like a surging tide surging as they charged over from the end of the earth. Tens of thousands of cavalrymen were extremely powerful, and there was no lack of experts at the Golden Body realm among them. They swept away the clouds like a whirlwind as they whizzed over. There were vicious beasts and barbaric birds among those mounts, and they were all extremely huge. As a result, they blotted out the sky and covered the earth. Their surging blood qi could simply intimidate saints when they were linked together. Chu Feng sighed inwardly. There was no time left. He couldn't get rid of Jinlin, Shihong, and the winged godhead because the evolver army of this world had appeared. If he delayed any longer, he was guaranteed to die here. This kind of blood qi was linked together in addition to the battle formation. It was simply impossible to resist. Even if a primordial divine mountain descended from the heavens, it would still be overturned. You're all free now. Run for your lives. Chu Feng withdrew his domain and no longer drew in the lightning on the bloody mountain peak, allowing everyone to regain their freedom. Why are you letting them go? Asked Ouyang Feng anxiously. Naturally, we're letting them escape. We'll lead the cavalrymen that blotted out the sky and earth and run away together, Chu Feng said in a low voice. As expected, everyone began to flee for their lives. From those who were watching the battle to those from damning Pure Land and those who had escaped, they scattered and fled for their lives. Chu Feng took advantage of the chaos to pull Ouyang Feng along. With a whoosh, he charged into the domain that had been withdrawn and disappeared right away. He hid in another concealed domain with the toad. In a split second, they were isolated from the outside world. Boom, 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 the magnificent army of thousands and thousands of horses galloped madly as they chased after all the spirits. Don't let a single one of them escape. These creatures from the foreign realm are very helpful to the gods' experiments. They're all top-notch materials, and they've grasped some techniques that are worth studying. Someone was using spiritual sound transmission to shake the battlefield. The great army charged over and blood-curdling screams could be heard from afar. Some spirits were caught up too. If they weren't captured alive, they were blasted apart by the surging blood qi. Be careful. These are all Yin spirits from the netherworld. Your yang qi is too strong and there are so many of you. The combined blood qi and yang qi is enough to make them collapse. Ouyang Feng's face turned deathly pale when he heard this. He was a divine beast, but he still couldn't do anything in this kind of environment. He could only resign himself to fate. If they were really captured, he and Chu Feng wouldn't be enough either. The Evolver army was loyal to a certain god. Their yang qi soared to the sky and they were the natural nemesis of spirits like them. Finally, the great army passed by. Chu Feng looked outside the domain and saw a few people who hadn't left. There were people at the Golden Body realm as well as people at the Transformation realm. In the end, even 2 people at the Golden Body realm left and rushed toward the blood-colored mountain peak to observe the sacred medicine watered by the divine beast's blood. There were only 4 people left at the scene. Chu Feng felt that they weren't much of a threat. Even if there were people at the Golden Body realm here, It wasn't as if he didn't have the power to fight. That was because his and Ouyang Feng's strength had increased explosively not long ago, and they had enjoyed a feast. Yes, there are spirits spying on us. Suddenly, a young man berated. He held a treasured mirror in his hand that could pierce through yin and yang and illuminate the yin qi in the vicinity. Young noble's divine senses are sharp. I'm impressed. A knight complimented. This young noble's status was unexpectedly very high. His strength was at the quasi-golden body realm. He wore a set of azure gold armor and was extremely swift and fierce. He had a hawk's eye and a wolf's eye. Chu Feng pulled Ouyang Feng out because he couldn't hide anymore. "In spirits, where's Luo Shurong?" this young noble shouted. Chu Feng revealed a strange look in his eyes as he gradually recognized that this was the leader of the group that made a deal with Luo Shurong. He was actually a young noble. Furthermore, he had brought a great army this time to exterminate all the spirits. "Young noble, you've come too late." Luo Shurong gave himself away and had no choice but to lead us into a bloody battle with a group of top-notch geniuses. In the end, he unfortunately died in battle. Chu Feng said. "Who are you guys?" that young noble asked. "I'm Yen Luo from the corpse race." "He has the superfluous combat physique and is Luo Shurong's ally," said Chu Feng. Our troops fought with those people. Unfortunately, Brother Luo perished. "Yes, Luo Shurong indeed mentioned your names and said that he could rope you in. Unfortunately, I came a step too late," said the young noble. Chu Feng nodded and said, "That's right." Brother Luo said that the young noble promised to give us a special technique. Therefore, the two of us were willing to take the risk and act. After the great battle, we waited here to meet the young noble. "Very good. I naturally won't let you guys down. I need you guys to cooperate and tell me about the situation in your universe in detail." This young noble was very satisfied. "Young noble, that special technique." Chu Feng mentioned it again. This young noble frowned, but in the end, he threw a magnetic stone to Chu Feng. There was a spiritual imprint inside and it recorded some kind of special technique. "For you," he said. "Thank you very much, young noble." Chu Feng smiled and expressed his gratitude. At the side, Ouyang Feng was dumbstruck. Even though he was on the same side, he still wanted to say that this grandson Chu Feng was really a Jun Tuoi. He actually swindled a special technique over just like that. Chapter 789. Cavalrymen crisscrossed the wasteland. All kinds of ferocious birds and beasts carried the cavalrymen as they whizzed away. Blood energy surged and yang energy surged as they launched a 1,000-mile chase. Whether it was the people from Damning Pure Land or Jinlin, Yingzhixian, Shihong, Winged Godhead, and the others, all of them flew away at top speed and started to flee for their lives. They had never imagined that things would be so bad this time. They had only been in this world for a few days, but they had already lost more than 2/3 of their members. Amidst the overflowing blood energy of the army, the spirit bodies that were lagging behind could easily explode. They were unable to withstand the terrifying masculine blood energy. And at this moment, Chu Feng was very calm, dealing with this young marquis named Pu Lin. He was rather calm, and the words he said were as if they were the truth. Only Ouyang Feng, who was at the side, knew that Chu Feng's mouth was full of lies. Not a single word of truth came out of it, even his name was fake. At this time, a group of knights returned. Unfortunately, they were empty-handed and did not gain anything. Reporting to young Marquis, this group of spirits are very ruthless to themselves. It wasn't easy to capture some of them alive, but in the end they all blew themselves up. Currently, there are no survivors. What? Pu Lin was shocked, and at the same time, he felt heartache. These were all foreign materials that were prepared to be offered to the deity's laboratory, but they had all self-destructed. Collect their soul fragments, Pu Pu Lin ordered. We can't collect them. All kinds of artifacts can't stop the rain of light from leaving, a knight reported. Chu Feng was surprised in his heart. He'd tried to stop the rain of light from leaving earlier, but he'd failed. Only by utilizing the Yang Realm seed to transform into a black bell could he stop it. Now, it seemed that this seed was also extremely mysterious and extraordinary after being transformed into a weapon. Pu Lin's gaze was terrifying as he said, "Go and chase after him, but don't force him too much. I want him alive, understand? This is very important. Foreign spiritual bodies are the best materials to sacrifice to the gods." "Yes, sir." The cavalry quickly left, and went to carry out Pu Lin's orders. At this moment, Chu Feng used his mental energy to nourish the magnet in his hand. He touched the mental imprint inside and examined the special technique that Pu Lin had given him in person. Then, he frowned and sighed. "Why are you sighing?" One of the cavalrymen noticed his actions. "Nothing." Chu Feng shook his head. "Speak, what's wrong?" Pu Lin turned around. "This." Chu Feng had a difficult expression on his face. After a brief moment of silence, he then opened his mouth and said, "Little Marquis, this special technique is slightly insufficient." Ouyang Toad was speechless and cold sweat was about to break out. He really wanted to say, "Ancestor, Pit Chu, don't be like this, okay? We should be satisfied that we can fool a special technique. Why are we still being picky?" Additionally, the toad had been praying all this time that it could survive this calamity and escape this place as soon as possible. That would be considered lucky. What's more, to be able to swindle away a special technique. He felt that he should really thank the heavens and thank the great hoodwinker Chu Feng. Once the magnificent army turned back, their vigorous vitality would resonate with the heaven and earth. Even if the toad was a mythological beast of the netherworld, it wouldn't be able to withstand it. It felt that it would disintegrate and explode. After Pu Lin heard this, he immediately raised his eyebrows and revealed a chilly light in his eyes. He felt that this Yen Luo didn't know how to appreciate favors. He actually dared to despise a special technique after obtaining it? The faces of the three riders beside him sank. One of them berated, "How dare you? You're just a little spirit, yet you dare to be picky and despise our world's special technique. What kind of knowledge can you have?" Cold sweat broke out on Ouyang Feng's forehead as he cursed inwardly. Chu Feng explained to Pu Lin, "Little Marquis, you've misunderstood." He had an extremely frank appearance as he recounted the course of the fierce battle with the other group of people. That group of people grasped a special technique, so they roped in many people. That's why Brother Luo Shurong and I failed on the verge of success. What a pity. Brother Luo is such a heroic and outstanding person, yet he was beaten up alive by a group of people. His divinity granules were even refined by the other party using that kind of special technique. His ending is tragic. The toad was speechless. Brother Luo died a heroic death. It's truly a pity. Chu Feng sighed. Ouyang Feng was speechless. He used all his strength to shut his mouth and maintain his silence. He really didn't dare to speak carelessly for fear of revealing Chu Feng's background. Those people also grasped a special technique. How did they obtain it? A rider beside Pu Lin was astonished. Chu Feng said, "It's said that they encountered the attendants of the moon goddess disciples and passed on a special technique to their leader. They wanted him to bring everyone to seek shelter with them. Even I secretly learned a little from them." After that, he recited the operation method of that special technique in front of everyone. In all fairness, the special technique bestowed by Pu Lin wasn't inferior to the special technique Chu Feng had obtained earlier. Chu Feng was deliberately belittling it. Furthermore, he said that the special technique he recited was only the first part and that group of people still grasped a follow-up and even stronger technique. What he did could be said to be extremely daring, as he wanted to ask for an even more powerful special technique. It's indeed the moon goddess's special technique. Pu Lin's expression turned chilly. According to what this young noble Pu Lin said, those people didn't dare to come over openly because the land in the periphery of Vicious Beast Plateau belonged to the area ruled by the martial god. The moon goddess subordinates could only urge those spirits to take the initiative to seek shelter there, but they couldn't personally send people to surround and capture them. Chu Feng was astonished. As it turned out, this was the martial god's territory. The few deities and tyrants on Vicious Beast Plateau corresponded to their respective wastelands in the periphery. At this moment, bad news arrived once again. It was very difficult for the army to capture them alive. Those spirits were abnormally unyielding and would self-detonate at every turn. Pu Lin was enraged after hearing this. He had led a large army here in large numbers. Could it be that they were going to return without accomplishing anything? Chu Feng and Ouyang Feng naturally knew that this was because they could still return to their original universe after self-detonating. However, once they fell into these people's hands and were sent to the divine laboratory, they would be half dead and would never be able to return. Pu Lin glanced at Chu Feng and said, "Have the people who followed you and Luo Shirong all died in battle?" "A lot of people have died in battle, but even more people have defected. They believe that the power that Dao brother Luo Shirong sought shelter with can't compare to the moon goddess's faction. After all, that side isn't stingy with their special technique and casually passed it down. This shows that they have a sufficiently powerful foundation." Chu Feng explained seriously and patiently. The bad news was that the other party's leader grasped a powerful special technique that could draw people's hearts. It could also show how powerful the moon goddess's faction was, causing neutral people to seek shelter there. The special technique isn't a problem at all. The deities on our side are known as the martial god, and there's no need to doubt their strength. Even if this faction's special technique isn't the strongest, it's almost there. Let me ask you, what methods do you have to lead those spirits to seek shelter here? It's very simple. We can't encircle and capture them so crudely. Otherwise, they'll commit suicide if we force them into a corner. Instead, we have to be gentle. I'll go and recruit them after the limelight this time has passed. Of course, the premise is that we have to first get rid of a few of the other party's leaders, such as Shi Hong, Jin Lin, Winged Godhead, and so on. That makes sense. I didn't think that those people's bones would be so hard. They would easily destroy indiscriminately. It's infuriating. Pu Lin nodded. Finally, he looked at Chu Feng again and said, "I naturally won't treat those who work for me unfairly. You said that the other party's special technique is very strong. Today, I'll pass on to you the martial god's unique special technique. I'll let you experience what is one of the strongest special techniques that can look down on all deities." "Many thanks, young Duke." Chu Feng cupped his fists. "Young Duke, is this all right? The martial god's special technique can't be passed on carelessly," a knight at the side reminded him in a low voice. Pu Lin was very dull as he said, "There's no harm. Even though it's a mid-grade special technique, it's already circulated in the army. It's not a secret that can't be passed on. Besides, even my father can't come into contact with many of the genuine high-grade special techniques, let alone me." After that, he tossed a divine magnet stone to Chu Feng. A section of the special technique was recorded inside, and it was indeed very astonishing. It was much stronger than the one Chu Feng obtained from the servant in the moon goddess's cave abode. It was also more complicated and profound than the special technique that Pu Lin had given to Chu Feng previously. After Chu Feng memorized it, he passed the divine magnet stone to Ouyang Feng. Toad really didn't know what to say. His small eyes lit up as he was filled with admiration. When Chu Feng's cheap temper flared up, he could really trick people. He actually succeeded in being picky and chose an even more powerful special technique, just like that. Pu Lin said, "Pass down my order. Don't force people to their deaths anymore. Since they're on this land, they can't run away. Take it slow. Let Yen Luo try it out in a few days." A knight at his side secretly transmitted his voice and said, "Young Duke, is it safe to pass on the special technique to these two people like this? Do they really have a way to bring more people over?" Pu Lin secretly replied, "We're just trying everything in a desperate situation. As for these two people, we can just casually get rid of them after they've lost their value. Can mere spirits still stir up trouble?" And at this moment, Ouyang Feng was also secretly communicating with Chu Feng and said, "Should we do something big and get rid of this bullshit young duke? Plunder all the things on his body. Who knows, maybe there's an even more powerful special technique." "Yes, let's brew a bit and be ready to make a move at any time," Chu Feng agreed. He felt that he should be able to get rid of Pu Lin and the three knights if he suddenly made a killing move. However, Pu Lin's following words immediately dispelled Chu Feng's thoughts. He felt that it was extremely necessary to restrain himself and couldn't make a move so rashly. "Do you see? These blood-colored mountain peaks are all dyed red by the blood of divine beasts. This is one of the martial god's medicinal plant fields." A few blood-colored mountain peaks belong to the martial god? This is nothing. The martial god still has some larger medicinal gardens. This place can only be considered a few small mountain peaks and can't be considered a true medicinal garden, said a knight. At the same time, this team of theirs was in charge of patrolling. They would walk all over the place on normal days and supervise the medicinal plant fields in various places. Because this place was relatively desolate and far away, and a powerful domain was laid down, there were usually the least people who came here. Pu Lin said, "Living beings with weak abilities can't go up the mountain, and living beings with strong abilities all know that this is the martial god's medicinal mountain. No one dares to offend the divine might. So, they all have owners." Ouyang Feng sighed emotionally. "Young noble, I heard that a few divine beasts charged into the depths of Vicious Beast Plateau a few days ago and wanted to start a war with the gods. What was the outcome?" Chu Feng seized the opportunity to ask. What else could there be? Even if they were divine beasts, it wouldn't do. Those divine beasts who thought themselves infallible almost died in the end. In the end, they escaped using secret techniques and left behind large amounts of divine beast blood, said Pu Lin calmly. He then added, "In a few days, we'll be in charge of escorting a bucket of divine beast blood over to water the sacred medicinal plants here. Oh, if you perform a little better, we might reward you with a few drops. This is divine beast blood that contains surging yang qi, and it also contains law fragments and so on. It's enough to wash away large amounts of yin qi from your body and purify your soul so that you can be reborn anew." When he heard this, Chu Feng was immediately tempted. One had to know that this was divine beast blood that contained a large amount of yang qi. It was a precious divine medicine that was sufficient to baptize their divine souls. Even Ouyang Feng couldn't sit still anymore. He was a divine beast and was known to have divine blood, but ever since he came to this world, he immediately knew that he could perhaps be called a yin divine beast or a ghost beast. The essence contained in his blood simply couldn't compare to the substance contained in the adult divine beasts of this world. "Young noble, you can't really be thinking of using divine beast blood to motivate them, right?" A knight secretly transmitted his voice. Pu Lin said, "How is that possible? If there's a chance, we'll leave some of it behind. Who do they think they are? We'll just kill them after we're done using them." Chu Feng and Ouyang Feng were also secretly transmitting their voices to discuss countermeasures. "That's too extravagant to use divine beast blood to water medicinal plants. If we don't rob them, who else should we rob? There's no escape." Ouyang Feng hooted. Yes, so don't be in a hurry to make a move now. Wait until we really see that kind of divine beast blood, then we'll let them go. Chu Feng nodded. At the same time, he reminded Ouyang Feng not to give himself away. This young noble wasn't a good person. Chapter 790. Ever since Pu Lin gave the order, the tens of thousands of cavalrymen were much more restrained and didn't dare to forcefully hunt and kill anymore. These were the foreign sacrifices that were to be delivered to the divine laboratory. This also led to the lives of the fleeing Qin Luoyin, Shi Hong, Jin Lin, and the others to be much better. Otherwise, only a portion of them would be able to escape in the end, while the majority would be annihilated. Chu Feng strolled around slowly and wandered around a few blood-colored mountain peaks. He was observing the terrain and studying the domains of the sacred mountain. That was because he reckoned that it would be extremely difficult to snatch the divine beast blood by force. When the time came, there would definitely be a large army pressuring the border and tightly encircling this place. He discussed with Ouyang Feng and felt that they could either ambush them halfway while escorting the divine blood or wait until the sacred medicine was watered before they could climb the mountain and take the blood from the medicinal garden. They thought through all kinds of problems and started to make various preparations. During this period of time, Chu Feng quietly erased all traces of the domains that he had set up earlier. In any case, Pu Lin and the others in front of him didn't understand this kind of method. It won't be good if someone who understands domains comes over and discovers it. Chu Feng was very cautious and careful. For a moment, he and Ouyang Feng had nothing to do because they had an agreement with Pu Lin that he would enlist those Yin spirits after this period of limelight had passed. Chu Feng took advantage of this opportunity to consult the cavalrymen beside Pu Lin humbly. He asked them about their cultivation experiences with this kind of special technique as well as the areas that they needed to pay attention to. He could feel that those cavalrymen were very perfunctory. They simply mentioned a few sentences and lacked sincerity. After that, Chu Feng and Ouyang Feng pretended to invite a cavalryman to accompany them. They found a place to hunt and personally tested the power of this kind of special technique. Pu Lin shot a cold glance at that cavalryman and secretly warned him. That cavalryman had no choice but to smile and agree, but with Chu Feng and Ouyang Feng's divine instincts, they could naturally sense that kind of fake smile. However, the two of them didn't care. They simply wanted to test the power of the war god's mid-grade special technique and how strong it was. They called for 1 or 2 cavalrymen to accompany them just to make Pu Lin feel at ease. They clearly didn't want to run away. There was no lack of prey in the wasteland. They didn't walk very far before they hunted a cold lizard. It could freeze the top of a mountain when it opened its mouth. This was a cloud-eater level creature. This knight, on the other hand, was very cooperative. He personally made a move and killed the cold lizard with a single spear strike with the energy of a quasi-golden arhat. Then, he tossed the carcass to Chu Feng and the others. You too try it. Chu Feng and Ouyang Feng carried out the experiment. As expected, the efficiency of this kind of mutant technique was even higher. Under the same conditions, the amount of divinity granules that could be refined and absorbed was more than doubled. Comparatively speaking, the absorption rate of the previous method was limited and very wasteful. It's so comfortable. My spiritual energy is increasing. This feeling of cultivation is really too wonderful, Ouyang Feng cried out exaggeratedly. He was naturally putting on an act. He had already experienced it a long time ago. Chu Feng said, Fellow Taoist, I think there might be dozens of cold lizards in this area. Let's hunt them together. You can also use this to strengthen yourself. This knight shook his head and said, I don't need it. I've already absorbed enough divinity granules this month. The two of you can hunt a few more, but more or less will do. What do you mean? There are so many cold lizards here. It'll be a waste if we don't hunt them. Ouyang Feng revealed a puzzled look. The knight sneered and said, "Who would dare to absorb divinity granules without a limit without grasping the martial god's highest taboo mutant technique? Don't think too much about it." Ouyang Feng instinctively felt that the situation wasn't right. There were some things that they didn't thoroughly understand in advance. "What do you have to pay attention to?" Toad asked with a guilty conscience. "Don't circulate the mutant technique too many times every month. Especially since the two of you are spirits, you mustn't be greedy. I suggest that each of you hunt a few cold lizards, and that'll be enough. If not, you'll die very miserably." This knight didn't conceal anything as he spoke of the disadvantages of circulating the mutant technique too many times. The more divinity granules one absorbed, the more times one would encounter heavenly tribulations. Take this knight for example. The last time he absorbed too much, he attracted a heavenly tribulation in less than a month. He almost didn't make it through and his soul was almost scattered by the lightning. He only managed to make it through after a narrow escape from death. How can there be such an easy path to advance in this world? A price must be paid for any achievement. Killing an opponent and using the mutant technique to refine a portion of the divinity granules contained in his body is, in the end, against the will of the heavens. It won't be long before one has to settle the score and accept the test of lightning strikes. Ouyang Feng and Chu Feng's complexions turned ugly when they heard this kind of words. One had to know that the two of them had absorbed a large amount of divinity granules not long ago and killed a lot of opponents. They reckoned that they had long exceeded the limit and would definitely be struck by lightning from the heavens. Of course, that was only a kind of fatalism just now. Through the research of the divine laboratory, it's mainly because one absorbs too many divinity granules in a short period of time. The origin is excessively complicated and the divinity granules from different sources interact with each other. You must know that this is an extremely high-level energy substance. When all kinds of divinity granules resonate, it's very easy to attract lightning. This knight's explanation made Chu Feng and Ouyang Feng's complexions turn increasingly unsightly. Just based on how much they had absorbed, they reckoned that they wouldn't even be struck by lightning once. They would have to do it a few times at the very least. Only after experiencing the baptism of the lightning tribulation can those divinity granules be considered to have truly been absorbed and belong to them, the knight explained. "Sigh, it seems that regardless of which world or which cosmos it is, the appearance of the heavenly tribulation is reasonable. Only by passing through its test can one be considered to have cultivated to the true fruit." Ouyang Feng conversed with Chu Feng in private. After that, their faces turned a little green. This was a world that was flourishing with yang qi. They reckoned that they wouldn't be able to withstand the lightning once it fell. That was because they were considered as ghosts in this world and spirits. This wasn't their cosmos, the netherworld. The yang qi in this world was very abundant. Originally, when they faced all kinds of living beings with flesh and blood, they would feel scorching and stinging pain. What was that lightning? Even though Chu Feng was so heaven-defying, he felt that he might not be able to withstand the bombardment of that kind of lightning when it was a genuine object of extreme yang. He and Ouyang Feng made some estimations. Based on the divinity granules that the two of them had absorbed, each of them would have to experience at least 4 heavenly tribulations. One heavenly tribulation would have at least tens to hundreds of lightning bolts. In a split second their faces turned green. This wasn't the lightning of the netherworld, but the terrifying lightning that contained the surging aura of extreme yang. At this moment, Chu Feng had a sense of urgency. He had to seize that barrel of divine beast blood and use it to carefully baptize himself so that he could shed his yin qi. Only then could he cross the tribulation. Ouyang Feng secretly transmitted his voice and said, "Pit Chu, great hoodwinker Chu, this is a matter of life and death. We might be done for." This is a classic case of playing with ourselves to our death. Hurry up and think of a way. Chu Feng said. According to what he said, even if we absorb too many divinity granules, we still have a month's accumulation and buffer time. The yang lightning still won't come for a short period of time. After that, the two of them went to hunt cold lizards absent-mindedly. They weren't afraid of being bitten when there were too many lice. Each of them killed 10 cold lizards before returning. Ouyang Feng said, Dao brother, is there any way to resolve this so that we won't be struck by lightning? We might have refined too many divinity granules carelessly just now. The knight said, You two are e'en spirits in this world. A lightning strike is enough to scatter your souls. If you really absorb too many divinity granules, there's no saving you. We shouldn't have absorbed too many, but I still want to ask if there's any way to resolve this. What should we do if we encounter this kind of situation in the future? I think there's definitely a way to resolve it. Ouyang Feng persevered. There is indeed. For example, bathing in divine beast blood. Also, do you see those blood-colored mountain peaks? There are sacred medicines planted on them, and they're watered with divine beast blood. If you can consume a small leaf, you'll naturally be able to put an end to the calamity invisibly. Unfortunately, you two don't have the qualifications to enjoy it with your status. When he reached the end, the knight revealed a disdainful expression, but he concealed it very quickly. Ouyang Feng secretly shouted, Motherf ****, let's do something big. Pit Chu, we must snatch that barrel of divine beast blood. Also, Immortal Chu, you must quickly increase your attainments in domains. Let's pluck those sacred medicines. Meanwhile, at Mount Eternal in Earth's East Sea, the demon race's cauldron glowed and emitted a machine-like voice. It summoned Big Black Yak and Yellow Cattle and informed them that they were about to start an even crueler trial. What? Didn't we pass? There's still a trial? Big Black Yak cried out strangely. It's precisely because you've passed that you can step into the higher-level trial field. The demon ancestors' cauldron informed them that they were about to enter a special world. That was a path that the demon ancestor had inadvertently opened when he was studying celestial beings back then and discovered a terrifying land. After that, the large cauldron informed them that only souls could go over and that it couldn't transport their physical bodies. It asked if they wanted to choose to undergo this kind of high-level trial. Choose. Yellow Cattle nodded. Let's risk it all and go. Big Black Yak also roared and shouted noisily. He wanted to experience that new world. After that, he asked Old Donkey and the others if they wanted to temper themselves together. But he also emphasized that there was a slim chance of survival and that the high-grade trial field was too dangerous. In the vicinity of the Bloody Mountain Peak, Chu Feng received accurate information from Pu Lin that the divine beast blood would be delivered tomorrow. This young noble was going to lead a group of people to receive it and then escort it up the mountain. It's tomorrow. We must get this big one. Ouyang Feng rubbed his palms together. On that day, most of the cavalrymen that were sent out returned. What made Pu Lin furious was that there were actually casualties. The people named Jin Lin and Shihong are very troublesome. They hid and then joined hands to secretly attack and kill some of our cavalrymen. Someone reported with his head lowered. Truly trash, Pu Lin said angrily, but it wasn't good to continue reprimanding them. Not long after, a very valiant cavalry returned. Cheers could be heard because they had brought back a captive. Chu Feng and Ouyang Feng felt that the situation wasn't good. They weren't willing to encounter a captive. How could someone be captured? Would it be good to fall into the hands of this group of people? They should have decisively returned to their original universe. Reporting to young noble, we've captured a captive. Yes, no, to be exact, after we surrounded her, she took the initiative to come over and talk, the cavalry captain reported. Bring her over. Pu Lin waved his hand and finally revealed a smile. After that, Chu Feng saw that it was actually Ying Zhixian and her younger sister, the silver-haired little Lolita, Ying Xiaoxiao. He was a little emotional. This devastatingly beautiful Ying Zhixian wasn't someone who was easy to deal with as expected. After being surrounded, she was actually rather calm and didn't rush to self-destruct her soul. Instead, she wanted to meet the person in charge here. She had quite the guts. The main thing is that we surrounded her younger sister. She turned around to rescue her, so she fell into the trap and was trapped, the cavalry captain added. This explanation astonished Chu Feng. He had a better impression of Ying Zhixian and no longer purely thought that her thoughts were too deep. You two are here too. Ying Zhixian immediately smiled. She was rather beautiful and exceptionally graceful, causing Pu Lin and the surrounding cavalrymen to be momentarily absent-minded. Even if these people thought she was a ghost or a Yin spirit, they couldn't help but gasp in admiration at her beauty. On the other hand, Ouyang Feng's heart was violently shaken and he was about to break out in a cold sweat. If this woman wanted to retaliate against them, they reckoned that they could only run away. He was already prepared to call out to Chu Feng to break out of the encirclement together. Chu Feng was very calm. At this moment, he revealed a smile to Ying Zhixian and expressed his pleasant surprise. After that, he said to Pu Lin, "Young noble, this is my Dao companion." She had no choice but to chase after those people who abducted her younger sister. Chapter 791. Ying Zhixian was slim, graceful, and otherworldly. Needless to say, her appearance was devastatingly beautiful. Ever since she was young, she was always the center of attention and was known as the third beauty under the starry sky. She had always been low-key and gave people the feeling that she was otherworldly. She carried a faint immortal aura and was above the common populace. There had never been news of her having affairs with others. Now, she had inexplicably become Chu Feng's Dao companion. Ouyang Feng was very afraid that she would refute and take revenge on Chu Feng and him. Judging from her performance not long ago, this woman wasn't simple at all and was rather powerful. Ying Zhixian was very calm and had a kind of ethereal charm. Her eyes were deep as she looked at Chu Feng. The corners of her mouth curled up slightly, which made Ouyang Feng's heart beat wildly because his instincts told him that she was in extreme danger. All of this happened in a split second. After Chu Feng finished speaking, he had already started to use his spiritual voice transmission to tell Ying Zhixian that he was saving her and Ying Xiaoxiao. Ying Zhixian was very calm. She said she could protect herself and at the same time, she didn't forget to poke Chu Feng's sore spot. As long as she casually said something, it would be enough to put Chu Feng in a desperate situation. Ever since she arrived, she was very calm and didn't call out Chu Feng's and Ouyang Feng's names. Clearly, she had considered all aspects and thought of all kinds of possibilities. She most likely figured out that the two of them used pseudonyms. Chu Feng felt that this woman had a meticulous mind and should have guessed that he and Ouyang Feng were crossing the sea by deceiving everyone. Therefore, he felt that Ying Zhixian's calmness was actually a warning to him. You and Ouyang Feng are really daring. The consequences will be unthinkable if your identities are exposed. Ying Zhixian's words were very concise. Of course, she was still communicating in secret. Chu Feng trembled. This graceful fairy was fussing about the title of Dao companion. At the same time, she was retaliating and threatening him and Ouyang Feng. Toad almost broke out in a cold sweat. This Ying Zhixian was indeed troublesome. Not only did she have the confidence to protect herself, but she also warned them. However, Chu Feng was still calm because other than communicating with Ying Zhixian in secret, he was also transmitting his voice to the silver-haired little Lolita in fear that she would give herself away. Moreover, Ying Xiaoxiao's reaction was very beneficial to him. Especially at this moment, the silver-haired little loli actually sent a godly assist. Ying Xiaoxiao was beautiful and exquisite. Her large eyes blinked and her eyelashes were very long. She immediately called out sweetly, "Brother-in-law." This caused Ing Zhexian's face to almost completely darken. The smile that had originally hung on her exceptional face was now so splendid that she couldn't deny it in time. Because this was her sister. If she were to correct and say that her younger sister was babbling nonsense, then Pu Lin and the others would have reason to believe that their words couldn't be trusted and that there was a huge problem. Therefore, at this moment, Ing Zhexian could only hang a smile on her beautiful face. In fact, she really wanted to strangle this damned child who specialized in harming her older sister. Chu Feng immediately went up to greet her. With such tacit understanding, he directly rubbed the silver-haired little Loli's long hair and called her sister-in-law. The silver-haired little Loli's performance could be said to be rather real. When she first saw Chu Feng, she had a startled look on her face and widened her beautiful eyes. But when she heard Chu Feng address her like this, she immediately became shy. In reality, she was very thick-skinned and wouldn't blush. The main thing was that when Chu Feng communicated with her in secret, he said that if she wasn't too young and directly said that the two of them were Dao companions, they would probably have a better tacit understanding. Therefore, this thick-skinned little Loli was rarely embarrassed. At this moment, her bashful appearance was displayed just right in this kind of situation. When Ing Zhexian saw her younger sister being so cooperative and harming her older sister, black lines quickly crept up her face. She immediately extended her hand to pull Ing Xiaoxiao and wanted to educate her in secret. At this moment, Ouyang Feng grinned widely and looked at the silver-haired little Loli with slanted eyes. He revealed a smile that he thought was kind and warm. "Jun Tuo's son, you look very ugly when you smile," Ing Xiaoxiao bluntly commented. Ouyang Feng's face immediately darkened. He really wanted to say, "Motherf ****. Why was the difference in treatment between him and Chu Feng so great?" "Who's Jun Tuo?" Pu Lin asked. "The old father of the superfluous combat physique," Chu Feng introduced calmly. Ouyang Feng's nose was about to emit smoke, but he could only stare blankly and listen in this kind of situation. He couldn't refute and didn't say a word. Silence was golden. When Toad saw Ing Xiaoxiao smiling over there with a very happy look, he immediately knew that the silver-haired little Loli didn't say it by accident. She did it on purpose. Ouyang Feng immediately made a judgment. This damned child wasn't simple either. When she grew up, she would definitely be as hard to deal with as her older sister. Pu Lin only asked casually and didn't sense anything inappropriate. At this moment, Ing Zhexian was talking to Chu Feng. To be precise, she was threatening and warning him that it wasn't that easy to take advantage of her, and that he needed to pay the price. Chu Feng's short few sentences immediately dispelled her various thoughts. She was willing to cooperate because she was extremely tempted. Since they had met, falling out wouldn't benefit anyone. Chu Feng could only pull her into his group and make her his collaborator so that they could plan important matters together. He mentioned a bucket of divine beast blood and said that the sacred medicine could perhaps be plucked. He even mentioned the special technique and the heavenly tribulation simply, which made it hard for Ing Zhexian to resist him. Ing Zhexian realized that if she wanted to quickly become stronger in this world, the divine beast blood and those sacred medicines were too important. She had to obtain them in the short term, but Chu Feng was still a little displeased. Ing Zhexian was too calm, and she was even warning and intimidating him faintly. As a result, it would be wrong for Chu Feng not to take advantage of her. He stretched out his hand rather naturally and pinched the silver-haired little Loli's little face. After that, he directly embraced Ing Zhexian and gave her a passionate hug. He said with a calm expression, "It's been hard on you." After a while, he revealed a very distressed expression and helped Ing Zhexian tidy up her beautiful hair that was formed from spiritual energy. They were spiritual bodies that contained the most fundamental imprints of life. This kind of contact could simply be said to be incomparably intimate as it directly touched their souls. But in a split second, Chu Feng grimaced in pain because Ing Zhixian ruthlessly pinched his waist. Just now, it touched his soul, and now, it was pain that penetrated his soul. I say, can the two of you change places? Don't show off your affection in public like this. Ouyang Feng was very resentful. There's still a child here. The silver-haired little loli protested even more discontentedly as she pouted her little mouth. Chu Feng and Ing Zhixian naturally separated. Chu Feng's face was full of smiles with the joy of reunion, and he even had a very warm look on his face. He didn't know what Ing Zhixian was thinking in her heart, but an enchanting smile hung on her face. The originally graceful and otherworldly Zhixian fairy now had an extremely rare and charming charm. Pu Lin revealed a strange expression as he was truly amazed by Ing Zhixian's exceptional charm. As for the group of knights, they all had unkind expressions as they stood in the distance and glared at Chu Feng covetously. From their point of view, this kind of exceptional beauty wasn't something a Yin spirit like Chu Feng could possess. Some powerful knights even pondered that if they were to help Ing Zhixian cleanse her Yin Qi and find a suitable physical body to reconstruct her body, she would definitely be a peerlessly beautiful and extraordinarily beautiful woman. However, they could only think about it now and couldn't put it into action. Pu Lin still needed these few people. Next, Chu Feng and Ing Zhixian proposed various conciliatory methods according to the current situation. They talked about a few concrete countermeasures on how to recruit those people who came from the same universe as them. This made Pu Lin rather satisfied. Ouyang Feng curled his lips at the side and cursed inwardly. It was fine that this great hoodwinker Chu Feng was full of lies, but Ing Zhixian, a woman who was a complete mess of beauty and had an immortal aura all over her body, actually lied without blushing or having a heartbeat. She was rather natural. He could only sigh. This was also a trap, and they weren't of the good kind. After that, Chu Feng pulled Ing Zhixian along and they meandered away. Some of the knights watched as an ominous glint flickered in their eyes. Ing Zhixian's face completely darkened when they arrived at an uninhabited area. She gave Chu Feng a serious warning that he couldn't get too close without her consent. After that, Ing Xiaoxiao ran over as well. The silver-haired little Lolita wasn't someone who was easy to deal with, as she directly asked for the special technique. "Call me elder brother and this prince will teach you." Ouyang Feng came over with a sullen face. "Jun Tuo's son, go away. Motherf *Ker, this seat can't tolerate this." Ouyang Feng was in an evil state, but a single sentence from Ing Xiaoxiao made him lose his temper and pile up a fake smile. "My family has divine beast martial arts, and there's a pile of them. Furthermore, there's an ancient method to nurture divine beasts to rapidly evolve. I've looked through all of them." These were the silver-haired little Lolita's original words. This caused Ouyang Feng to have a fake smile on his face as he followed by her side. He was practically about to become a nanny. The next day, Pu Lin summoned all the evolvers back and ordered several thousand people to guard this area and surround a few bloody mountain peaks. He then led several thousand knights to personally welcome the emissary and receive the barrel of divine beast blood. Even in this world, the blood of an adult divine beast was abnormally precious. They're here, but it's unrealistic to snatch that barrel of divine beast blood right away. We have no way of approaching them, Chu Feng said in a deep voice. They stood far away from those several thousand knights. At this moment, they experienced the terrifying drawbacks of being spiritual bodies, especially soul bodies like theirs that had Yin Qi lingering around them. They felt the surging blood Qi and the Yang Qi that was so dense that it was terrifying when they faced the army. If the few of them really wanted to charge over, those several thousand knights would just roar loudly, and they would probably explode. We must bathe in the divine beast blood or consume that kind of sacred medicine nourished by divine blood to baptize the yin qi in our bodies, said Ouyang Feng. That way, we won't have to be afraid of the blood qi and yang qi emitted by this kind of army. Pu Lin received the emissary on the way. The army protected her as they crowded around her and escorted her to the bloody mountain peak. Lord Emissary, do you need to rest? Asked Pu Lin. There's no need. I'll go water the medicinal herbs now. I still have to rush back to the depths of Vicious Beast Plateau today. The emissary was an old woman with white hair and a youthful complexion. She was very calm and collected. She took out a container that was half the height of a person. It was a large barrel carved out of jade. Even though it was sealed, a bloody light was already overflowing from it and emitting scarlet rays of light that were extremely dazzling. Furthermore, there was a formless might that intimidated the surroundings and made many knights tremble. Their mounts whined even more as they almost fell limply onto the ground. The blood of an adult divine beast was already like this even though it was still sealed. As expected, it was terrifying. Once it was poured out, it was simply unimaginable. Is he trying to nurture a divine medicine? Muttered a knight at the Golden Body realm in the distance. They suspected that the apothecaries under the martial god had this kind of intention, which was why they were willing to invest like this. It's divine blood. It's too extravagant to use it to water medicinal herbs. I really want to replace those old medicines. Ouyang Feng's eyes were red. The few of them stood very far away and had no way of approaching it. Firstly, the blood qi there was too strong. Secondly, it was because it was intentionally isolated and didn't allow them to get too close. That emissary handed the jade barrel to Pu Lin and let the knights under him be in charge of bringing it up the mountain. The emissary and Pu Lin looked at each other, and a radiant light flashed through their eyes. They had reached an agreement in private. They would leave behind a small amount of divine beast blood and then split it evenly. Even they couldn't resist the temptation of such a priceless item. They started to climb the mountain. The emissary took out profound magnetic flags one after another and disappeared as soon as they entered the ground. After that, this area shone and a safe path appeared which led to one of the bloody mountain peak. Chu Feng stared at it without blinking. He secretly operated his fiery eyes and golden runes surfaced in the depths of his soul as he observed the various methods that the emissary used. The emissary was very cautious and used all kinds of smokescreens. But in essence, he was indeed opening up a safe path and was about to reach the top of the bloody mountain peak. Chapter 792. The emissary carefully tossed out the profound magnetic flags. Some were definitely tricks to confuse people, and she deliberately made it incomparably complicated. Following that, the old woman tossed out a few profound magnetic flags with surging clouds and mist, causing mist to rise up in this area and surround the bloody mountain peak. The emissary is very cautious. She's afraid that someone will spy on the domain path here, so she used the profound magnetic mist to cover and isolate people's line of sight, a middle-aged golden arhat said in a low voice. He led over 1,000 people in charge of guarding this area. Chu Feng also thought so at first, but he soon saw some clues. The old woman and Pu Lin looked at each other and revealed a faint smile. After Chu Feng used the fiery eyes, the golden runes in his soul flickered. That magnetic mist couldn't block his line of sight, and he could still see clearly. These two are strange. Don't tell me they want to steal what they're guarding? Chu Feng was seriously suspicious. The few people who followed them up the mountain were all trusted aid. Pu Lin was very at ease with them, but the old woman watched Pu Lin sternly. In the end, Pu Lin only brought one trusted aide up to be in charge of carrying the jade bucket. They're stealing the divine beast blood. This time, Chu Feng saw it clearly. Even though the mountain peak was already covered by the magnetic mist and became completely hazy, he could still see everything clearly. The old woman moved quickly. She took out a jade jar and opened a small seal on the bucket of divine blood. She drew out some bright red and resplendent divine beast blood and poured it into the jade jar. She finished in an instant and put away the jade jar. At this time, they had already arrived at the top of the mountain. There were 5 medicinal herbs here, emitting a refreshing fragrance. They were sparkling and brilliant, containing the essence of heaven and earth. Next, the old woman completely opened the seal. In a split second, a bloody light rushed into the sky. Even the mountain peak was shrouded in mist, but it couldn't hide this kind of light. The blood of an adult divine beast was indeed universally shocking. Obviously, the blood had been refined to remove the baleful aura within. Otherwise, this kind of blood definitely wasn't something a quasi-golden arhat like young noble Pu Lin could come into contact with. If it still contained the baleful aura of a divine beast, the life forms in close range would be blasted apart by the impact. Even a golden arhat at great perfection wouldn't be able to withstand it. Roar! At this time, close to 10,000 mounts near the bloody mountain peak roared together. They were incomparably flustered and in awe. They had a deep sense of fear. Regardless of whether it was a ferocious beast or a barbaric bird, all of them collapsed to the ground under this pressure, as if they were soldiers facing their king. The knights on their backs were also slightly pale as they jumped off their mounts. The baleful aura in the divine beast's blood had indeed been completely refined, but the unique aura of a supreme beast king still made all the birds and beasts tremble, and they couldn't help but want to worship it. That was why the mounts here were all wailing, trembling in fear. Ouyang Feng's entire body tensed up, and he felt his scalp go numb. He was also a divine beast, but in front of this kind of adult divine beast's blood with surging yang qi, he actually felt terrified. He was a little nervous. He understood more and more that he was just a divine beast of the Yin realm. He was considered a ghost beast. Compared to this kind of divine beast that was full of yang energy, the difference was too great. Amidst the low roars of the ferocious beasts and the trembling cries of the vicious birds, all kinds of mounts knelt on the ground, as if they were on a pilgrimage. In the end, on the mountaintop, young noble Pu Lin's complexion was pale as he personally took action. He poured out a portion of the divine beast's blood and watered 5 medicinal herbs that were only a foot tall. After these medicinal herbs were moistened by the divine beast's blood, they suddenly erupted with astonishing balls of light. They were abnormally resplendent and blossomed with different colors. The mountaintop was a field of gorgeous colors and dazzling rays of light. Some of the medicinal herbs were completely golden, some of them had turned into an even deeper scarlet red, and some of them were silvery white as snow. After the 5 kinds of medicinal herbs were nourished by the divine beast's blood, their colors changed, and a dense aura of divinity pervaded the air. Martial God! At this moment, tens of thousands of knights around the blood-colored mountaintop roared loudly, shaking the mountains and rivers. They were roaring and praising the might of the martial God. They knew where this kind of divine beast's blood came from. In the last few days, several adult divine beasts had come to take revenge, but in the end they were almost slaughtered. Among them, the martial God, who had great achievements, covered the sky with his hand and almost completely slaughtered the most powerful divine beast, stripping a lot of blood from its body. Martial God! The loud roar shook the mountains and rivers. F***ck. Ouyang Feng couldn't help but curse because he almost exploded along with this kind of roar. Those knights' hot blood surged and they were in high spirits as they loudly shouted the martial God. That was close to fanatical worship. At this moment their blood qi and yang qi rushed out of their bodies. In a split second, this part of the sky was filled with everyone's blood qi which surged into the sky. Ouyang Feng, Chu Feng, and the others found it unbearable as they quickly retreated. If they were roared at like this a few more times, they reckoned they would explode. Even so, Ing Xiaoxiao's face was pale and cracks appeared on her soul. She was almost roared to death. After that, Chu Feng stood far enough away and stared at the mountaintop. He saw through the mist that the young noble Pu Lin was stealing the divine blood. When he was watering the 5 medicinal herbs, he used a jade jar to extract a portion of the blood, stuffing his own pockets. Chu Feng's eyes were burning and his saliva was about to flow out. He could see resplendent scarlet clouds soaring into the sky from the mountaintop. There was no need to doubt the medicinal effect of that divine beast's blood. It was absolutely astonishing. He yearned to obtain it more and more. This kind of thing could most likely completely wash away the yin qi entangled in their bodies, thereby allowing their souls to transform and produce dense yang qi. There wasn't just one blood-colored mountain peak. There were a few rare treasured medicines growing on each of the mountaintops, and they divided the bucket of divine beast blood equally. After that, no matter if it was the emissary or Pu Lin, they didn't dare to steal the divine beast blood anymore. They were afraid that something would happen, so they began to play their part and earnestly watered the medicinal herbs on the other mountain peaks. Every time they climbed the mountain, the emissary had to make arrangements to open up a safe path. Chu Feng frowned because the domain arrangements on each of the blood-colored mountain peaks were different, which increased the pressure on him. If the arrangements were the same, he could observe them many times and thoroughly comprehend them from there. Have you figured it out? Ouyang Feng secretly transmitted his voice in anticipation. It's very difficult. I reckon it'll be very difficult for ordinary domain grandmasters to crack it. That emissary didn't have profound attainments, but he must have seen the detailed explanation of domain diagrams. In the end, the emissary left, completely satisfied. Mo Lin was also full of smiles. This time, he and the old woman cooperated very delightfully. Each of them obtained a jar of divine beast blood, which was really too precious. At this moment, there was light on the mountaintops of the few blood-colored mountain peaks. They were bright red and sparkling. That was still glowing after the divine beast blood had seeped into the soil. Time waits for no man. That divine beast blood has seeped into the soil. If this goes on, it'll dry up. We can only watch helplessly. Ouyang Feng was very anxious. At this moment, the young noble Pu Lin walked over and said proudly, "Yen Luo, I'll create the conditions for you to temporarily withdraw your troops and leave this area. You seize the opportunity to recruit those in spirit. I'll quietly wait for good news." Without a doubt, the main reason he was in such a hurry to leave was because he wanted to try out the effects of the divine beast blood he obtained. Chu Feng and Ouyang Feng were very conflicted. They really wanted to get rid of this young noble and snatch the divine beast blood he was pouring, but there were too many cavalrymen around him. Their blood qi surged and they couldn't get close. Ing Zhixian dealt with it very appropriately. She told Pu Lin that there would definitely be a satisfactory result after a few days and that he could wait for good news. Very good. Pu Lin laughed heartily and led his troops away. Chu Feng revealed a smile. After these people went far away, he was going to make his move and try whether or not he could ascend one of the blood-colored mountain peaks. However, his smile quickly vanished. 3 cavalrymen returned. Pu Lin left these trusted aides behind, saying that he would assist Chu Feng and Ing Zhixian and help them overcome various difficulties. In reality, Pu Lin still wasn't too at ease. He was afraid that Chu Feng and the others would run away. "Yen Luo, when are you going to subdue those in spirits?" A cavalryman sat on a savage beast and looked down from above as he asked Chu Feng. There was a wild radiance in his eyes. After he finished looking at Chu Feng, he stared at Ing Zhixian without the slightest scruple. His gaze was somewhat fiery. He felt that if he could find a suitable physical body for Ing Zhixian, she would be remolded into an extraordinarily beautiful woman. "There's no hurry," Chu Feng replied. How could he leave now? He was in a hurry and was still preparing to steal the sacred medicine and absorb the divine beast blood. This cavalryman at the quasi-golden body realm berated. What do you mean? The young noble left to create conditions for you, yet you're actually slacking off. Why aren't you quickly enlisting him? Chu Feng was speechless. He could already tell that this cavalryman's gaze towards Ing Zhixian wasn't right. As a result, he was implicated and was now in a hurry to force him away. Femme fatale, he secretly said to Ing Zhixian. Simple. Just kill him. Ing Zhixian was rather decisive because they would leave after plucking the sacred medicine here. She wasn't afraid of shedding all pretenses of cordiality. Why aren't you going? Didn't you hear my order? This quasi-golden body realm cavalryman's face sank. Chu Feng replied, I know when to go. In addition, the young noble asked you to stay and cooperate with us, not to let you flaunt your martial prowess here and randomly give orders. He didn't make a move immediately because he was afraid of alarming the cavalryman who had just left. At the very least, he had to wait for their overflowing blood qi to completely disappear from the horizon. You really think of yourself as a dish. Even if you rely on us, you're only a ghost servant, this quasi-golden body realm cavalryman reprimanded. The other two cavalrymen also laughed and revealed disdainful expressions. One of them also opened his mouth and said, I have no choice but to remind you that a Yin spirit like you will never be able to stand on equal footing with us. Pay attention to your tone when you speak. You're only the young noble's ghost servant. You can make your move now. Ing Zhixian secretly transmitted her voice to Chu Feng, indicating that she was already prepared. On the other side, an ominous glint also appeared in the depths of Ouyang Feng's eyes. He couldn't help but want to make a move a long time ago. He secretly informed Chu Feng that he was also prepared. Even Ing Xiaoxiao was fuming and extremely dissatisfied. Kill. Chu Feng's eyes were cold. He suddenly attacked and directly shook out the soul bell. After the black bell flew out, it smashed the quasi-golden body realm cavalryman's skull into pieces. You! The quasi-golden body realm cavalryman was furious. His spiritual body rushed out and was incomparably shocked and furious when he saw his own tattered corporeal body. His body was actually destroyed. If it wasn't for his quick reaction, his soul would have been killed. Ouyang Feng and Ing Zhixian attacked separately too, but they couldn't succeed in the first instance. Their soul light exploded behind the two cavalrymen's corporeal bodies, and let out sizzling sounds as they were injured by that scorching blood qi and yang qi. How dare you! Those two were furious. Crap! We have corporeal bodies to protect us. Their blood qi innately restrains us. Ouyang Feng cried out strangely. Boom! In a split second, Chu Feng also used his soul light and attacked one of their heads. In the end, he encountered the same outcome. With a sizzling sound, his soul power was burned by his corporeal body. He couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. It was no wonder that Ing Zhixian's five-colored divine light was ineffective. Even his powerful soul light suffered a loss and was burned by the blood qi. Chu Feng immediately knew where the crux of the problem lay and shouted, All of you, fall back! He activated the soul bell and fought fiercely with those two. In reality, those two were already stamping with rage and charging over. If it wasn't for the protection of their corporeal bodies, they would have been finished off just now. At the same time, they were also very shocked. They had always used special methods to temper their corporeal bodies in the army to specifically restrain Yin spirit. Now they actually encountered danger. Dong! In the end, the soul bell rumbled. These two knights seemed to have been struck by lightning as their souls were jolted and injured. The key was that Chu Feng's black bell wasn't simply a soul weapon. It also had a material body, and was formed from the Yang realm seed. It harmed both their corporeal bodies and souls. These two were killed. At the same time, the soul at the quasi-golden Arhat realm from before turned around and fled when he saw the situation. He felt that things were far from reassuring, but the soul bell vibrated and a terrifying bell wave surged out, strangling him to death. Even though they successfully killed 3 knights, Chu Feng, Ing Zhixian, and Ouyang Feng all had solemn expressions. They actually encountered people from the army that were so troublesome. They come from the army and have blood fiends on their bodies. They also have the densest yang qi, which specifically restrains spirit bodies like us that carry yin qi. We can't use soul light to attack next time. If we encounter people from the army again, it's safer to directly use soul weapons to attack. After analyzing the reason, they became even more resolute. They wanted to baptize the yin qi on their bodies as soon as possible so that they wouldn't be restrained like this. Chu Feng took materials from the ground and dug out some magnetic stones from the nearby ground. He started to set them up and continuously approached a blood-colored mountain peak to open up a safe path. Chapter 793. Rip. Scarlet arcs of lightning streaked across as they approached the bloody mountain peak. They resembled bloody light, yet they also resembled the eyes of the Grim Reaper. It made people shiver and their hearts tremble. Not to mention Toad, Ing Xiaoxiao, and Ing Zhixian, even Chu Feng himself wasn't confident. He was a little hesitant along the way because this area was really too dangerous. It could be said that they would be consigned to eternal damnation if they took a wrong step here. Their bodies and souls would certainly be destroyed if they were struck by that blood-colored lightning. They were innately restrained in various ways in this world where yang qi flourished. The wasteland was very peaceful. Only this area would occasionally emit lightning, and the silence would be broken when the red lightning struck down. Chu Feng stopped and pondered for a long time. He didn't dare to rashly take a step forward. He already saw that this was a life strangulation domain. Using rocks, weapons, and so on to probe it was completely useless because no domain runes appeared. This meant that even if he wanted to use some inanimate objects to probe the path, the effect wouldn't be great. However, when he used his soul light to probe it, he would encounter the blood-colored lightning if he landed on the wrong spot and would be completely annihilated. This is forcing people to use their lives to fill up the path up this bloody mountain peak. Chu Feng sighed. They didn't have physical bodies to protect themselves and were congenitally deficient. If they were struck by lightning in this area, it was guaranteed that they would die instantly. Chu Feng found those 3 tattered corpses and placed them side by side on the ground. He had long since stripped away the spatial bracelets on their bodies. Now, he was prepared to invade one of the corpses with his own soul light. "Are we reincarnating in someone else's body?" Ouyang Feng mumbled. He was also fiddling with a corpse and was prepared to invade it. This was a bad plan that he had no choice but to do. Even though Ing Zhixian was elegant and otherworldly and quick-witted like a fairy, she didn't despise it. She was also studying a corpse with the silver-haired little Lolita. Chi. However, Toad let out a blood-curdling screech in a split second. He was the most restless as he recklessly invaded a corpse with his soul light. In the end, he was burned until green smoke came out. He fled in a hurry with his entire body covered in raging flames. This gave Ing Xiaoxiao a fright. She decisively retreated and wouldn't touch the corpse in front of her even if she was beaten to death. "They've already become corpses, yet they're still restraining us. Motherf ****, this is too shameful." After Ouyang Feng extinguished the fire, his expression was unsightly. Even though they had become corpses, the blood in the bodies of the 3 knights was still very terrifying. Their blood qi was extremely masculine, and it was like a fatal poison to soul bodies like them. From this, it could be seen how terrifying this world full of yang qi was to them. Truth be told, It's mainly because these knights have cultivated a special secret art. Their blood and qi are like a furnace which innately restrains Yin's spirit. Chu Feng deduced that other creatures wouldn't be able to do so. The reincarnation plan had failed. Chu Feng calmed his mind and began to deduce the domain laws of this place in earnest. The main reason was that the emissary had used a fair number of smokescreens and special methods to interfere with outsiders spying. This caused Chu Feng to feel that it wasn't safe enough. In the end, after Chu Feng studied it carefully, he believed that there were a total of 5 locations on the road to the mountain that he couldn't confirm was safe enough. He had to personally walk through those nodes to be able to judge. Chu Feng, you can't be so deceitful. We only have one life, so we can't try our luck. In case we fail, we'll be annihilated in a puff of smoke. Ouyang Feng was the first to object. Ingzhixian said, "There's no lack of vicious birds and ferocious beasts in this wasteland. We can catch some." "That makes sense." Ouyang Feng nodded. After a moment, they made their move together and caught 6 cold lizards. They wanted to subdue them and force these cold-blooded creatures to climb the mountain. However, even though the cold lizards stared at the blood-colored sacred mountain's medicinal herbs with fiery gazes after they arrived in this area, all of them resisted fiercely when they approached and were forced to climb the mountain. In the end, they all went mad and didn't cooperate at all. This is the martial god's medicinal mountain. No matter who dares to covet it, they'll suffer divine punishment and their souls will scatter, roared a cold lizard. In the end, the 6 cold lizards risked their lives against Chu Feng and the others, but they were killed as expected. "Perhaps we can use the cold lizards' bodies to reincarnate," suggested Ouyang Feng. He tested it out for a bit. The damage he suffered when his soul light invaded wasn't too great. The main reason was that creatures like the cold lizard carried yin qi by itself, so it was bone-piercingly cold. Chu Feng also tried it out for a bit. He reckoned that he could reside in the cold lizard's body for an hour. If it was too long, it would still cause damage to his soul. Even if we have a suitable corporeal body, it's still too dangerous for us to climb the mountain ourselves. Ingzhixian brought up another idea and suggested to try it out. There are many purple gold rats dwelling in the wasteland in the distance. We can try to lure them over. If a large-scale rat tide is ignited and they attack that path up the mountain. After Chu Feng heard this, he immediately nodded. If a large number of creatures attacked the path he deduced, he would naturally be able to accurately and effectively correct the best path. So much so that after the rat tide broke out, some lucky rats might be able to climb the mountain directly. There were bound to be a few individuals who just happened to walk on the correct path. Unfortunately, the wishes were beautiful, but the implementation wasn't as one wished. Not only the cold lizard, but the purple gold rats were also terrified and uneasy after arriving here. They were unwilling to go forward and had a kind of fear that came from their bones. They would rather go crazy and turn around to fight Chu Feng and the others with their lives than climb the mountain. In the end, Chu Feng and the others caught a small leader of the purple gold rats and used their soul light to forcefully control it. They issued orders through it and commanded over 100 purple gold rats to attack the bloody mountain peak. In the end, 90% of the purple gold rats rebelled and didn't listen to the orders. They turned around and fled. The dozen or so purple gold rats actually obeyed the orders and climbed the mountain, but they went crazy very quickly and charged around randomly. They didn't achieve the desired effect of scouting the path at all. They were directly struck by a streak of blood-colored lightning, and the dozen or so purple gold rats were completely annihilated. Ouyang Feng sighed and said, "I know the reason. This bloody mountain peak is stained with divine beast blood, especially since it was just watered today. The invisible divine beast aura intimidated all the vicious birds and ferocious beasts. They didn't dare to approach because they felt fear from the bottom of their hearts when facing their supreme king. He was a divine beast from the Yin realm, so he understood this rather well. Chu Feng didn't believe in heresy. He controlled the leader of the purple gold rats once again in a thrilling and difficult manner. In the end, the effect was more or less the same as before. It was completely useless. Moreover, he was determined to invade the second small leader of the purple gold rats and almost suffered a backlash from its masculine blood qi. At this moment, regardless of whether it was Chu Feng, Ying Zhixian, or Ouyang Feng, all of them were rather silent. Heaven-warping figures like them were actually so unbearable here. Even if this purple gold rat was as large as a rhinoceros and was at the consummate cloud-eater realm, it still shouldn't be able to endanger them like this. They were originally gifted by the heavens, but after coming to this world, they still couldn't compare to a mutant rat. I want to return to the Yang realm. I want to wash away all of my Yin Qi and become a genuine pure-blooded divine beast from the Yang realm. At this moment, even Ouyang Feng was shouting like this because he was incited to no end. That was because he had already tried seizing control over the body of the purple gold rat's leader just now. In the end, Ouyang Feng's own body was burned by the purple gold rat's blood qi until he cried out continuously. How could he endure this? It was a divine beast. All kinds of methods were used, but in the end they discovered that, if they wanted to climb the mountain, they still had to move themselves in the end. Fairy Ying, I think we need you to take action. Don't you still have the death substitute talisman on you? Chu Feng said. Unexpectedly, Ying Zhixian was rather straightforward. She didn't decline and was willing to cooperate, but she also clarified her point of view. This kind of opportunity should be used at the final juncture and only use the death substitute talisman when they truly plucked the sacred medicine. She made a very clear judgment that there was definitely something strange in the vicinity of the sacred medicine and that there was the greatest danger. How much soul light do I need to use to control a cold lizard every time? I reckon I need to use at least 1/20th of my soul light. If it's too little, I'll be corroded and burned by its blood qi, and I won't be able to control its body. In the end, they decided to take a risk. They separated a bit of soul light to control the cold lizard's corpse and used it to explore and find the safest path. There shouldn't be any problems with the results of your domain deduction, right? Are there only 5 locations that need to be explored? More or less. Not only did Chu Feng's response make Ouyang Feng stare blankly, but even Ying Zhixian revealed a rare expression of a little girl and immediately rolled her eyes at him. After that, they used a cold lizard to climb the mountain. This was a body of flesh and blood that Chu Feng personally controlled. He wanted to observe the domains on the blood-colored mountain peak from a close distance. Bang! Not long after, a blood-colored electric arc streaked across. He let out a muffled groan as that cold lizard exploded and turned into a pile of ashes. His spiritual energy was naturally lost. Next, Ying Zhixian used a wisp of soul light to control the corporeal body of a cold lizard and started to climb the mountain. After a quarter of an hour, that cold lizard also exploded and was exterminated in both body and soul. Ying Zhixian also lost a lump of spiritual energy. There were a total of 3 out of 5 nodes that had problems. Ouyang Feng, Chu Feng, and Ying Zhixian each disintegrated a portion of their spiritual energy to explore the correct path. But they didn't celebrate because it was hard to say whether Chu Feng's subsequent deductions were correct or not. A cold lizard climbed the mountain slowly and climbed up the blood-colored mountain peak. At first, everything was very smooth. This was equivalent to Chu Feng's temporary clone. He saw 5 sacred medicines on the mountain peak. They were gorgeous with golden, purple, and silver radiance resonating and a sweet fragrance assailing his nostrils. But what was very bad was that the cold lizard that Chu Feng controlled disintegrated once again after reaching this place. It was hacked into pieces by a dark red electric arc. He lost 2 lumps of spiritual energy in such a short period of time. His spiritual energy was reduced sharply by 1/10. After that, Ying Zhixian and Ouyang Feng also took turns and exploded one after another. Only Ying Xiaoxiao was taken care of. He didn't let the silver-haired little Lolita go into battle. Ouyang Feng was on the verge of tears. Gathering medicinal herbs was too difficult. 1/10 of his spiritual energy was gone just like that. This could already be considered a heavy injury. Chu Feng, Immortal Chu, think about it carefully again. You can't cheat us like this anymore. Didn't you say that there were only 5 nodes on the road that were uncertain? The toad scowled miserably. Chu Feng frowned deeply. There were too many variables on this blood-colored mountain peak. This was definitely the handiwork of a domain master. The emissary from before was too cautious and had all kinds of precautions when climbing the mountain. He most likely had the so-called divine magnetic flag in his hands that could stabilize the path. Boom! In the end, the cold lizard that Chu Feng controlled was once again smashed into pieces by a blood-colored electric arc and was exterminated in both body and soul. This was simply using one's life to pave the road. It was too arduous. Finally, they succeeded at the last moment. Chu Feng, Ouyang Feng, and Ying Zhixian lost almost 1/5 of their spiritual life energy before they arrived in front of the old medicines. After careful observation, it was the same as their previous judgment. This was a great medicine similar to the Kuan bloodgrass and Qilin bloodgrass. It seemed that its medicinal age was astonishing and it was effective even for quasi-saint. It could be called a sacred medicine. Now that they were watered with divine beast blood again, the medicinal effects would increase by a large margin if they were given time. But Chu Feng and the others didn't have time to wait. They were all bright red at first, but now one was golden, one was lustrous purple, one was still as red as blood, one was brilliant silver, and one was clear and azure. At this moment, the 5-colored sacred medicine's medicinal fragrance was so dense that it made people feel as though they were about to leave the ground. It was as though they could sprout wings and ascend to heaven. It seeped into one's soul. We're finally going to get it. Chu Feng was delighted. After that, he looked at Ying Zhixian and indicated that she could use the death substitute talisman. That was because the damage to their soul light was too severe, and they couldn't consume it anymore. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't be able to handle it if they encountered a special situation. Use mine, said Ying Xiaoxiao. She hadn't used her death substitute talisman yet. Ying Zhixian had participated in the siege against Chu Feng earlier but was trapped in the domain instead. The death substitute talisman had shattered 3 times. Ying Zhixian still had 2 chances to save her life while Ying Xiaoxiao had 5. Use mine once first. Ying Zhixian didn't allow for any doubt as she stopped her younger sister. After that, she took out a divine talisman. It was snow-white, sparkling, and engraved with complex and profound patterns. It was personally refined by a heaven illuminator. This death substitute talisman would be effective as long as it wasn't used by someone of a higher level. Not only do you have to pluck the sacred medicine, but don't forget the divine beast blood at its roots. Just water it and dig it up with mud and soil. Chu Feng warned. To be safe, even with the death substitute talisman, Ying Zhixian controlled a cold lizard to climb the mountain to pluck the medicine. Bang! As expected, an accident happened when they were digging up the sacred medicine. An energy light flew out and shattered the death substitute talisman. So it's a small-scale life deprivation domain. Chu Feng saw through what was going on. After that, he made Ying Zhixian break open a few pieces of soil and stones according to his instructions to make that place safe. In a split second, scarlet clouds surged with gorgeous rays of light. Apart from that, there was also an astonishing medicinal fragrance that spread from the top of the mountain. It was intoxicating. Ying Zhixian successfully plucked a golden medicinal herb and extracted the divine beast blood at its root. She placed all of it into the jade container in her spatial bracelet. The spatial bracelet was obtained from the bodies of the 3 dead knights. Ing Zhixian and Ing Xiaoxiao's death substitute talismans shattered 3 times in succession, but it wasn't too bad. After all, they didn't waste 5 times. In the end, the 5 sacred medicines and the divine beast blood that had been watered were all collected. This is great. We've struck it rich. We can finally break free from the restrictions of ghosts and wash away all our yin qi. From now on, our yang qi will truly overflow, and we won't have to fear the blood qi of the living beings in this world anymore. Chapter 794. 5 sacred medicines containing strong yang qi were enough for them to baptize their souls and expel the yin qi. This was undoubtedly a rebirth for their spiritual power. They were congenitally deficient and restricted in all aspects. Once the baptism was successful, their foundations would change. Haha, this is wonderful. Ouyang Feng laughed heartily. He opened the spatial bracelet and looked at it again and again. He felt refreshed. His previous efforts hadn't been in vain. Although he had lost 1/5 of his soul force, which was considered a serious injury, it was all worth it. His spiritual power cultivation would be even faster in the future. Especially after the baptism with the divine beast blood, that terrifying calamity, the extreme yang tribulation, would probably not come. Chi. All of a sudden, a cold blade light appeared. It was too terrifying and incomparably abrupt. It slashed at Ouyang Feng's arm in an attempt to snatch the spatial bracelet. Ouyang Feng was too excited and didn't sense the danger at all. As a result, it was already too late to dodge. His arm was cut off by the sharp blade light, causing him to roar in anger. This was an arm formed from soul force, and the pain reached the deepest part of his soul. At the same time, the spatial bracelet fell directly to the ground. A spirit wearing a black soul armor suddenly appeared from the void with a bright soul blade in hand. It flashed past and grabbed at the spatial bracelet. "You're courting death." The toad was in unbearable pain. At the same time, he was both shocked and furious. Someone had actually launched a sneak attack at such a critical juncture and wanted to kill him to snatch away the sacred medicine and divine beast blood. What was most unbearable was that he had really been hit and was heavily injured. Boom! The toad opened his mouth and spat out a beam of soul light to kill that person and prevent him from snatching the spatial bracelet. At this moment, Chu Feng also flew into a rage. Someone actually wanted to pick the fruits of their labor midway and snatch away their sacred medicine and divine beast blood. How could he tolerate this? However, in just a moment, several figures soared up from behind the rocks and suddenly attacked fiercely. They attacked Chu Feng and Ouyang Feng to stop them and buy time for the black-armored man. Chu Feng could tell at a glance that these were soul bodies from the same universe as them. Moreover, there were acquaintances, such as the winged godhead, the immortal destiny physique, and a purple-haired man. As for the person who cut off Ouyang Feng's arm, he guessed that it was someone from Skypiercer. That was because their methods were too superior and their concealment skills were outstanding. The ambush just now was extremely terrifying. Clang! That expert from the Skypiercer turned his hand around and cleaved through the soul light that Ouyang Feng had spouted out. He grabbed the spatial bracelet and was about to snatch it away. "Come back!" Ouyang Feng roared loudly. He used his soul light and immediately pulled back. Buzz! At this moment, Skypiercer's expert brandished his blade again and hacked at Ouyang Feng. At the same time, he also urged his soul light to fight over the spatial bracelet. The few people who suddenly appeared had an incomparably dense murderous aura as they attacked ferociously. Before this, Chu Feng and the others had lost more than 20% of their soul light when they ascended the mountain. Their consumption was excessively terrifying, and it was equivalent to suffering heavy injuries. Their vitality was greatly damaged. Being ambushed like this and being attacked like a torrential storm was not a good thing for the few of them. It was precisely because their vitality had been greatly injured, and because Chu Feng and the others were wholeheartedly studying domains just now that they hadn't discovered the enemy's stealthy approach. However, this was enough to show how powerful these enemies were. Especially since they hadn't seen each other for more than a day, these people had clearly become stronger. Their spiritual energy had strengthened by a large margin. Without a doubt, they had obtained some kind of special technique. This was also where their confidence came from. They only dared to follow the original path back to investigate the situation after becoming stronger themselves. Originally, they were still incomparably afraid of Chu Feng and didn't dare to make a move rashly. Even though they were extremely tyrannical themselves, they still felt that it was inappropriate. Not long ago, they shockingly discovered that Chu Feng and the others had actually successfully plucked the sacred medicine and obtained the divine beast's blood. This kind of thing was too enticing to them, so they took the risk to ambush them. Furthermore, it looked like it was extremely successful at the beginning. Qi, that expert from Skypiercer, was very powerful. He was even closer to the spatial bracelet than Ouyang Feng. His soul light swept out and seized it first. Furthermore, he used the soul blade in his hand to sweep across and force Ouyang Feng to retreat. Following that, he soared into the sky and fled rapidly. He was about to go far away. Let's go. The winged godhead, the immortal destiny physique, and the purple-haired person were incomparably pleasantly surprised when they saw the situation. This kind of harvest was too great, and it was practically a feast for them. They all knew that this kind of sacred medicine and divine beast's blood with surging yang qi could definitely allow them to wash away a lot of yin qi from their bodies. The benefits were too great. Ouyang Feng went crazy. How could he tolerate losing these things from his hands? He withdrew his severed arm. After this damaged spiritual arm consumed a lot of energy, it once again fused with his body. Ouyang Feng roared and activated his soul drum. Dong-dong sounds rang out as he attacked fiercely in front of him. At the same time, he also soared into the sky and chased after them. Bang! At the crucial moment, Toad suddenly threw out his soul drum and smashed it toward the back of that expert from Skypiercer. The drum sounds were loud like the eruption of thunder. Clang! The expert from Skypiercer brandished his blade and slashed backward. After colliding with the soul drum, the soul blade in his hand trembled, and his body also suddenly swayed. That was because this was an attack from Ouyang Feng's fury. If it were someone else, they would probably be smashed to pieces right away. The expert from Skypiercer was very powerful, but even so, his body staggered and almost fell. Where do you think you're going? At the same time, Chu Feng also charged over. How could he tolerate them stealing the divine beast's blood and sacred medicine? Clang! A bell rang out as he activated the soul bell to attack. This caused a few people's expressions to change as they were extremely fearful of this kind of weapon of his. If it wasn't because the divine beast's blood was too tempting, they really wouldn't be willing to face off against Chu Feng in the short term. Crack! The soul blade of the expert from Skypiercer exploded as it was shattered by the soul bell that Chu Feng activated with all his might. At the same time, a bell wave swept over and shook this person until he coughed out large mouthfuls of soul blood. This was the origin of spiritual power. Bang! At the same time, Ouyang Feng also charged over. He brandished the golden soul blade that he obtained from Luo Shurong and hacked forward. The golden blade light flashed, and the expert from Skypiercer's arm fell off. The spatial bracelet also fell along with it. The reason why this expert from Skypiercer was instantly injured was mainly because he was shaken by Chu Feng's soul bell until his entire body was in intense pain and he almost disintegrated. His movements were severely restricted and somewhat slow. Collect! The immortal destiny physique shouted as he used soul light to collect the spatial bracelet. At the same time, the winged godhead and the purple-haired person supported him together. The three of them suddenly charged out and didn't care about this expert from Skypiercer. Clang! Chu Feng mobilized the soul bell and directly caused this expert from Skypiercer, who was slow to move, to suffer a grievance. This was because the soul bell trapped this person below. The bell wave surged and caused him to explode. However, Chu Feng's body also swayed for a while. The consumption was too great, and the main reason was that he had lost 20% of his soul light when he climbed the mountain earlier. This was an extremely serious injury. Naturally, this was also the reason why Ouyang Feng's arm was cut off from a sneak attack. Kill! Chu Feng shook out the bell wave and swept it forward. At the same time, he suddenly chased after the expert. Whoosh! At this moment, Ying Zhixian made her move. Not long ago, an unforeseen event occurred, and she protected her younger sister at the first instance. At this moment, she pulled her younger sister along as she chased after the expert and also mobilized her unique five-colored divine light. In a split second, the immortal destiny physique was swept down, and his body staggered. Of course, Ying Zhixian herself also swayed, and soul blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. It was too strenuous for her to use the five-colored divine light when her vitality was greatly injured. Whoosh! However, she didn't stop. She mobilized the five-colored divine light once again and swept it toward the immortal destiny physique, who was falling down. She wanted to seize back the spatial bracelet. Once this kind of divine skill was successfully cultivated, it was known that nothing could escape from it. It could contend for supremacy with those who cultivated the 10 ultimate techniques and the 9 extremes technique. This was a kind of great divine ability. The immortal destiny physique was greatly shocked. If he was swept away again, he would most likely be trapped here. When he saw the murderous Chu Feng controlling the soul bell and madly attacking him, he became more and more fearful. Chi. At this moment, he was extremely decisive as he suddenly tossed the spatial bracelet out. As expected, Ying Zhixian changed the direction of the five-colored divine light in a flash and didn't sweep at her opponent again. The immortal destiny physique heaved a sigh of relief. He had gambled correctly. After that, he immediately soared up and fled with extreme speed. He was truly afraid at that moment just now. If he was fixed in place by the five-colored divine light and Chu Feng smashed the soul bell over, he would undoubtedly die. The winged godhead and that purple-haired person looked at each other. They were incomparably regretful and even pained. They almost plucked the peach midway and snatched away the great fortune. Unfortunately, Chu Feng was too fierce and Ying Zhixian's five-colored divine light was too astonishing. It made the spatial bracelet in their hands fly away again. They didn't dare to stay any longer and began to flee. Whoosh! The five-colored divine light flashed and Ying Zhixian successfully withdrew the spatial bracelet. Even Chu Feng coveted this kind of method. He felt that he had to properly study the 10 ultimate techniques and the five-colored divine light after he calmed down. If he could successfully cultivate this kind of legendary thing, his combat strength would increase explosively with his vigorous spiritual power. Clang! Chu Feng shook the soul bell and launched a great pursuit. He wished he could immediately kill the 3 people in front of him. Motherf ****, stop for Grandpa. You actually dared to mount a sneak attack on me and pluck the peach midway. Grandpa Ouyang is furious. Ouyang Feng was the most furious. His arm had actually been chopped off by someone. This truly made him feel humiliated and incomparably furious. Something's wrong. Quickly leave this place. Suddenly, Chu Feng was horrified and felt uneasy. He stopped abruptly. After that, he saw the bloody light on the horizon soar into the sky. It was too intense. It was formed from the combination of overflowing yang qi and blood qi. It was extremely terrifying. Motherf ****, Ouyang Feng cursed. If this kind of blood qi approached them, they wouldn't even need anyone to make a move. They would collapse and directly explode. Yingzhixian pulled her younger sister and turned around to leave very decisively. It was naturally impossible for Chu Feng and Ouyang Feng to stay. They flew away. The immortal destiny physique, the winged godhead, and the purple-haired person also saw the blood qi on the horizon. They felt their blood run cold and went far away in another direction. Rumble! It was as if the heavens were falling and the earth was splitting. 5,000 cavalrymen appeared in the distance. The wild beasts they were riding roared and charged over. Young noble Pu Lin appeared again. He actually turned around and came back to kill. Why did he come back again? Ouyang Feng was uncertain. After all, they still hadn't washed off their yin qi. They belonged to yin spirits and had a monstrous blood qi. If they were really caught, they would die miserably. We don't have time to fuss about so much. Let's go, shouted Chu Feng. However, he guessed that perhaps the 3 cavalrymen they killed not long ago had some special connection with Pu Lin. For example, their extinguished soul lamps were sensed. Of course, it was also possible that someone from the same universe as him had sought refuge with Pu Lin not long ago and exposed his and Ouyang Feng's identities. My yin spirit servants, where do you think you're going? Shouted Pu Lin from behind. His voice was accompanied by the sound of thunder as it fused with the blood qi of several thousand people and charged forward. Pu Lin, what nonsense are you shouting for? Get lost! Ouyang Feng hooted. Of course, he ran very quickly and simply didn't dare to stop. Mere yin spirits and ghost servants, yet you dare to betray me? Shouted Pu Lin. After that, he was shocked because he saw that one of the blood-colored mountain peaks was dim. The 5 sacred medicines on it were gone. How dare you! He flew into a rage and ordered everyone to chase and kill in a frenzy. Chapter 795. Pu Lin was furious on the surface and looked like he wanted to kill Chu Feng and Ouyang Feng, but he was so excited that he was trembling in his heart. Those 2 ghostly slaves could actually ascend the bloody mountain peak and pluck the sacred medicine. This was a heaven-sent opportunity for him. Those medicinal herbs were destined to be his. It didn't matter even if he was punished by the higher-ups because they thought he wasn't dutiful enough when he patrolled the medicinal garden. If he could secretly leave behind the sacred medicine and divine beast blood, everything would be worth it. Don't let a single one escape. Chase after those in spirit. Even the servants I subdued dare to betray me. Pu Lin ordered and urged his mount to chase after them. He wore chain mail and his whole body was shiny. He held a heavenly dagger axe in his hand as he rode on a blue-eyed, golden-eyed beast. The beast's claws were sharp and terrifying marks would appear every time it landed on the ground. Even the rocks were about to shatter. Kill! Pu Lin took the lead and charged forward. Behind him, 5,000 cavalrymen whistled. Humans shouted and beasts roared. Their armor was dense and their blood qi collapsed the clouds. Overflowing yang qi surged and shook this desolate plateau. Chu Feng, Yingzhixian, Ouyang Feng, and the silver-haired little Lolita were enduring the most terrifying might. Even though the scarlet blood qi was far away, it still made them fidgety, their chests felt stuffy, and their souls trembled. They were innately restrained. Roar! Behind them, humans shouted and beasts roared. The blood qi of 5,000 cavalrymen joined together and slapped forward like a scarlet wave. With a boom, it was as if the heavens were falling and the earth was splitting. The wasteland was shaking, the earth was cracking, and huge rocks were exploding. Damn it! Ouyang Feng growled. When the ocean-like blood qi surged over just now, it almost slapped his body. Even so, his body emitted green smoke and sizzled as part of it was burned. The only fortunate thing was that they all possessed extreme speed. There was no need to mention Chu Feng. He had grasped the world's end near at hand and the earth shrinking technique. Ouyang Feng's current appearance was like a black swan. As he flapped his wings, he was as fast as lightning. If Chu Feng didn't put his life on the line, he wouldn't necessarily be able to catch up to him. Ying Zhexian was also very astonishing. Her family was well learned and had accumulated secret techniques for generations. Naturally, she had exceptional divine technique. She sped along with her younger sister like a rainbow. Find someone to share the damage, Chu Feng muttered. Ying Zhexian and Ouyang Feng nodded. In a split second, they chased after him in a certain direction. Their soul light seemed to be burning as it released a gorgeous rain of light as they fled at an extreme speed. They were chasing after the winged god body, the immortal destiny physique, and the purple-haired youth, causing them to be under the pressure of the towering blood chi behind them. Despicable! Shameless! The winged godhead couldn't help but curse. He felt that the situation was very bad. This was clearly forming an encirclement, and the three of them were also going to be chased by the cavalry army. However, they hadn't even touched a single leaf of the panacea. They hadn't even smelled the scent of the divine beast's blood. Furthermore, one of their companions had died for no reason. Now, they were actually regarded as Chu Feng's accomplices. Chu Feng and the others did not feel the slightest bit of sympathy for them. Instead, they loathed these three people. They had actually dared to pick peaches along the way and waited to ambush them at the foot of the mountain. They were truly hateful and should be executed. Behind them, the ferocious beasts were roaring. 5,000 mounts were galloping madly, causing the earth to tremble violently like a great earthquake. The most terrifying thing was the baleful chi that hid the sky and the earth, as well as the ocean-like blood chi that surged over frantically. The situation was becoming more and more frightening and dangerous. The winged godhead, the immortal destiny physique, and the purple-haired youth were extremely furious. Chu Feng and Ouyang Feng stuck to them like dogskin plaster behind them as they were determined to share the damage. At this moment, the three of them were whispering to each other. After some discussion, they decisively changed their direction and secretly transmitted a message to Pu Lin, informing him that this matter had nothing to do with them. The three of them didn't want to be chased and hoped that Chu Feng and the other two would continue to attract the firepower. Therefore, they secretly explained. After that, they dashed to one side and wanted to continue making Chu Feng and the others a target. Pu Lin wasn't someone who was easy to deal with either. After he heard the transmission, he burst into laughter and shouted, "The three of you attack immediately and help me block them. Then I'll believe you." Behind him, the armored cavalry broke through the wasteland and billowed with smoke signals. When Chu Feng heard what was said, his thoughts turned at lightning speed and he shouted, "Purple Hair, you're so king and scrupulous. The three of you split 60% of the divine beast blood, and now you still want to deny that it has nothing to do with you? Do you want to take advantage of the chaos to escape?" When the three of them heard this, their faces instantly turned pale and they were filled with endless hatred. This was simply like yellow mud falling into one's pants. Even if it wasn't a problem, it would still become a problem. The three of them were furious. No matter what they said, it was useless. The three of them had already been kidnapped and became accomplices. That young noble Pu Lin behind them was definitely not a good person. He would definitely rather kill the wrong person than let them off. Chu Feng, you're too shameless. The divine beast blood and the sacred medicine are clearly on you. Are you trying to divert the trouble? The winged godhead roared angrily. No matter what, he had to make his attitude clear and explain to the cavalry army behind him. Ouyang Feng cursed, "Winged godhead, you grandson? You still want your grandfather's sacred medicine? The portion that belongs to me has already been snatched by you. One person wants 2 portions. Are you still human?" The silver-haired little Lolita also shouted, "That's right, Purple Hair. You stole my sacred medicine. You're not a good person." "Winged godhead, I believe the three of you. Help me stop them, Pu Lin shouted from behind with a grim smile. As long as the few people in front started fighting, none of them would be able to escape. It didn't matter if they were accomplices or not. He would capture them all. The faces of the winged godhead, the immortal destiny physique, and the purple-haired youth darkened. How could they dare to stop? They were fully aware that once they were captured, they definitely wouldn't have a good ending. Ouyang Feng shouted, "You three grandsons, do you dare to stop us? You stole 2 sacred medicines and took 60% of the divine beast blood. You guys have a guilty conscience." The faces of the 3 people in front were ashen. That black swan was splashing dirty water and taunting them at the same time. It was truly infuriating. They wished they could skin him alive. Chi. At this moment, a terrifying arrow streaked across the sky. It carried a terrifying radiance and raging flames as it shot toward the back of Chu Feng's heart. The divine archer of the cavalry had attacked. Chu Feng's body tensed up. He had the illusion of meeting the god of death while he was moving at high speed. His entire body was ice cold as he felt how terrifying this arrow was. The yang qi was too strong. He was changing directions at an extremely fast speed, but this arrow was also changing directions along with him. It was like a resplendent sun bombarding over with a majestic aura. Be careful. Don't shoot him until he explodes. What if the sacred medicine and the divine beast blood are destroyed along with him? That would be a great crime, Pu Lin shouted. He was even more anxious than Chu Feng. He was actually worried that Chu Feng would die. When Chu Feng heard this, he felt very humiliated. He was really looking down on them too much. However, this arrow was indeed very terrifying. Chu Feng avoided this arrow by a hair's breadth, but the terrifying yang qi that brushed past him was like a divine gold soldering iron. It burned his soul light and made his body emit sizzling sounds as a large expanse of green smoke rose. Furthermore, soul blood spilled out of his mouth. In this universe, a soul body like him was in an extremely terrible situation. It was just an arrow from a golden body realm expert, yet he was almost killed. Not to mention Chu Feng himself, even the winged godhead, the immortal destiny physique, and the purple-haired youth felt a chill in their hearts. They were too weak in the face of the army's pursuit. "Are you all right?" Ouyang Feng whispered. His expression was also extremely unsightly. If this went on, they would probably all be killed. Pu Lin revealed a smile and said, "Very good. It's fine as long as you don't shoot them until they explode. 10 divine archers, attack together and use yang qi to burn these ghost slaves." In a split second, 10 divine archers soared into the sky from the cavalry army. Each of them drew their bows and aimed at the few people who were escaping in front of them. In the sky, it was as if 10 ancient and ferocious divine birds, the golden crows, had been resurrected. They emitted a terrifying aura and pervaded the air with extreme yang energy that spread out. The 10 divine archers were all at the golden body realm and were at the same level as the person who shot the arrow just now. If they really shot their soul bodies, Ouyang Feng and the others would immediately explode without any suspense. "Chu Feng, Ouyang Feng, my 2 spirit servants, do you still want to escape? Kneel down now and I'll spare you the death penalty." Pu Lin sneered. His spiritual sound waves were very strong and rumbled in the vast sky. He threatened, "If you dare to resist again, kill without mercy." He already knew the true names of Chu Feng and Ouyang Feng. With a wave of his hand, the 10 divine archers in the sky all became resplendent. Their big bows were pulled into the shape of a full moon, and the feathers of the arrows were glaring. Ouyang Feng shouted, "Grandson, do you think your God King Grandpa is scared? Come on, if you dare to shoot arrows, I'll dare to shatter the spatial bracelet and destroy the holy medicine and divine beast blood inside. I won't be threatened. Shoot." Pu Lin shouted. In reality, he was incomparably nervous. He was really afraid that Ouyang Feng would go crazy and destroy the spatial bracelet, thereby triggering a huge explosion. However, he really didn't want to be threatened. He was worried that these people would be fearless because of this and break away from his control. Chi, 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 chi in the sky, one divine rainbow after another flew over. All of them had long tails of light swaying behind them as they illuminated the earth like comets crossing the sky. It was too splendid. The 10 feathers of the arrows were abnormally glaring as they burned with terrifying yang qi. Elder sister! Ing Xiaoxiao cried out in alarm because she saw that when Ing Zhixian brought her along to avoid a divine arrow, the feathers of the arrow also changed direction and chased after them unceasingly. Bang! In the end, Ing Zhixian took out her 5-colored divine light and forcefully changed the direction of that arrow, but her own 5-colored divine light also soared into a rain of light. A portion of it was burned, and her soul was damaged. Her spiritual energy sharply decreased. "I'm fine," Ing Zhixian answered. After that, her gaze was chilly as she turned her head to glance at the great army behind her. She shouted at Ouyang Feng and Chu Feng, "Use the spatial bracelet as a shield and let them shoot us. We'll be crushed together with the holy medicine and divine beast blood." She had already taken out the spatial bracelet and used it to block in front of her. On the other side, Ouyang Feng cried out loudly as he was chased to the point where there was no way out. He listened to Ing Zhixian's words and immediately became ruthless as he used the spatial bracelet to block in front of him. If the other party dared to shoot, he would undoubtedly die. Of course, the holy medicine and divine beast blood would also turn into flying ashes. Pu Lin was horrified and secretly transmitted his voice to the divine archers. "Avoid him! Don't shoot the spatial bracelet." To others it was too difficult. After all, the feathers of the arrow had already been shot. However, these divine archers attached a wisp of soul light to the feathers of the arrow and could change their direction. Chi! That arrow soared into the sky and brushed past Ouyang Feng's body. It ignited half of his body, and he cried out in pain as he hastily extinguished the flames of Yang Qi. "Grandson, why don't you shoot again?" Ouyang Feng challenged. At this moment, Chu Feng and Ing Zhixian also did the same. They carried the spatial bracelet and used it as a shield. They temporarily escaped from the danger, but the winged godhead, the immortal destiny physique, and the purple-haired youth were abnormally uncomfortable. They didn't have spatial artifacts on them, so they couldn't threaten or make the other party refrain from shooting. The purple-haired youth let out a blood-curdling scream. One of his palms was struck by the arrow and immediately exploded. Even his entire arm turned into flying ashes and was completely incinerated on the spot. This made everyone tremble with fear. That divine archer at the Golden Body Realm was indeed terrifying. The feathers of the arrow he shot out were destructive as soon as they made contact with one's body. Immortal Destiny Physique, can't you use the Immortal Destiny Light once? Take us away or else we'll all die. The winged godhead discussed in a low voice. After using it, I'll be unbearably weak for a very long time. Anyone can take my life. The Immortal Destiny Physique sighed. However, he already had no other choice now. The winged godhead and the purple-haired youth hurriedly swore that they would protect him. Buzz! When the divine archer shot the arrow again, the immortal destiny physique erupted with a large expanse of light rain. It wrapped around the other two and transformed into a beam of flowing light that rapidly disappeared into the horizon. That kind of speed was too fast. Even a quasi-saint might not necessarily be able to catch up. Oh no, these 3 grandsons ran away. There's no one to share the damage with. Ouyang Feng let out a strange cry. Pu Lin's face was ashen. 3 of the prey in his eyes and the sacrificial offerings he wanted to offer to the martial god had actually escaped. This made him unhappy. He wanted to intimidate Chu Feng and the others, so he shouted, I don't care anymore. Shoot one of them first. I absolutely won't be threatened by anyone. I want to see if you guys can be unyielding to the end." In a split second, the 10 great divine archers took aim at Chu Feng, Ying Zhixian, and Ouyang Feng. "Shoot that bird first. It seems to be the son of some big shot, Jun Tua, but he's nothing at the moment. Kill him," Pu Lin instructed. "Pu Lin, you grandson? You're the son of Jun Tua." "No, you're Jun Tuo's grandson." Ouyang Feng still had the leisure to be angry at such a juncture. Moreover, he was flustered and exasperated. "Come here." Chu Feng summoned Ouyang Feng. He had already taken out the soul bell and used it to protect himself. After that, he signaled to Ying Zhixian, and the two sisters quickly entered the soul bell as well. In a split second, the large black bell enveloped them. Chu Feng exerted force, and as his soul light flickered, this large bell let out a drawn-out bell sound. It broke through the sky at an extremely fast speed. Ying Zhixian said in a low voice, "Flee in the direction that the winged godhead and the others left in." Yesterday they were chased by the cavalry, but they successfully broke away from the army. Perhaps they discovered a favorable terrain for their escape. At the same time, she slightly hesitated. In the end, she resolutely informed Chu Feng that she was going to use a forbidden technique to lend him a helping hand. However, her vitality would be greatly damaged because of this, so she would have to rely on their protection later on. "Fairy, don't worry. You're Chu Feng's Dao companion, which is my sister-in-law. We'll take care of you and this little Lolita." Ouyang Feng opened his mouth, and almost said that Chu Feng's Dao companion was Divine King Ouyang's Dao companion. Ying Zhixian was disinclined to refute him at such a juncture. Chi. 5-colored divine light flashed as she activated the secret technique that could contend with the 10 ultimate technique. Once it was successfully cultivated, it would be an unrivaled divine ability. Right now, she could only be considered to have achieved a small success as she fulfilled all the cultivation requirements. In a split second, the entire soul bell emitted 5-colored divine light. They seemed to not belong to the 5 elements and transcended the mortal world. With the speed of light, they disappeared at the end of the horizon. Ouyang Feng was excited as he said, "That's great. We've finally broken away from this group of cavalry bastards. Immediately consume the sacred medicine and bathe in the divine beast's blood. We'll settle things with that group of bastards later." You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.